And we are recording on Sunday, May 24th, 2026 at 1:09 p.m. Eastern Time, waiting for Mr. Luongo. As Jim was just telling us, you had metal on metal hip replacement and you got
I
cobalt
had three
poisoning.
hip replacements, and the first one was a new innovative implant product from I forgot the name of the manufacturer. Anyway, it after 10 years of rotating around in my in my hip, it was abrading off all these metal particles into my bloodstream. And it turned out that I had cobalt and chromium poisoning.
What the?
And my extremities were going numb. And the next thing that happens is that you get cardiomyopathy. But
Jesus.
When was did they
that
not?
was
Oh,
about
fuck.
2000, that was about 2012. And I didn't know what was going on with me. So I thought I had Lyme disease bad. And I went to the Lyme guru doctor of the Hudson Valley, a guy named Stephen Bach, and he did this panel of blood tests on me. And I asked him to take a metal panel because on the internet there was a lot of information coming up about neuropathy and hip implants, metal on metal hip implants, where you have a metal ball and a metal socket. And that was a new thing. They used to do metal into plastic, and the plastics weren't that good. They kind of wore out too soon, so they replaced it with metal. And there's a particular kind of, chromium, cobalt, titanium metal. Anyway, Stephen Bach got the results back, and he's looking at the paper, and he says, "Oh, this is okay for Lyme. This one tests negative. Holy shit, your metals are off the chart." And so I went right back to the orthopedic surgeon, and they hooked me up with a guy who's known as a revision surgeon because taking out the implant can be tricky. Sometimes they have to take out the whole goddamn thing in your femur, and which means they have to quote unzip your femur to get
Right.
this fucking spike out with a ball on the end.
Hmm.
Now, they didn't do that in my case. They took the ball off, they unscrewed it and put a new ball on, gave me a new plastic um, cup or
Socket.
what is it? What is the term for that? I forgot that too. Um, and so I've been pretty good ever since. But so th those were two hip replacements, and then I had the other side done. And I believe that it was all a result of being a runner for 25 years and just pounding the cartilage out of my hip sockets. So
Yeah, they
there you
say
have it.
running's not that good for you, actually. Running,
I don't think it is. I think it's a big mistake in my generation, your
So do I.
generation too, Dave.
So do I. I'm also biased because I can't run well, but like run far. But like it does. Somebody pointed out they're like long distance, with the exception of a few, they're like they don't look great. And somebody made a great comment. They're like, well, when in human history is somebody always running? It's like, yeah, well,
well,
they're out of
actually,
food
in
and running
in
away. It's
well, in Africa, the distance runners all come from, I think it's
like one town.
East Africa, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's because they used to steal each other's cattle, and supposedly they evolved to be able to run.
Yeah,
And so the distance runners all come from the east. The sprinters all come from the west, Africa,
Yeah.
and it's human evolution for you right there.
Yeah. Well, it didn't work out too well for me. I think that many other boomers, depending on their quote somatic weakness, developed either, bad knees, bad hips, bad ankles, bad feet, bad something, something bad spine. For me, it was my hips.
how do
Yeah,
they
the
not?
spine I think comes from going from quadrupedalism to bipedalism very
Hmm.
quickly.
Hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'm
you.
okay now. And but it was, that was one of the ordeals of my 60s,
Oh, there's the
which
man.
is a dangerous period in your life.
Tom, we're already recording. Yeah, you
That's
think they'd foresee that? That the metal on metal. I thought you were gonna say it was like
They were poorly
1960s.
tested, and it was a fiasco for the orthopedics industry because there were thousands upon thousands of lawsuits, and a federal judge finally took charge of the business, and he forced the several manufacturers, which included Johnson and Johnson, Stryker, Biomet, which was the one that made mine. He forced them to form a large pool of millions of dollars to pay out the claimants who were then vetted on a kind of a sliding scale of how badly you were damaged. So,
So I think medicine, I mean, it's got some moments, certainly, like the person who invented Imodium should get a Nobel Prize. Um, my there are I think medicine picked all the low-lying fruit. So they got, the various antibiotics and things like that, and ran out of targets at some level. And so now they're prescribing maintenance drugs that are of questionable efficacy, of very questionable, sort of health. My wife just detoxed off SSRIs that they put her
oh,
on, and it was a rodeo to get off them.
I
And
bet.
and so she's just, say, 2 or 3 days ago is all of a sudden sort of rallied off after she had tapered down uneventfully, and then that last precipice, the last cut in the dosage over about a 10-week period,
Ooh.
went right off a cliff, and she was just sicker than shit. And my
Oh,
my dog simultaneously came up with diabetes, and we came close to putting her down, and then it turns out she rallied, and we have her on insulin. She's doing great, and so now we shifted our attention from putting down the dog to putting down my wife. And I've read
Motherfucker.
a number of books on pharma, and they're really not flattering. The book Sickening by John Abramson, Cheryl Atkinson's book, The Real Anthony Fauci by Bobby Kennedy. They all tell a pretty horrible story about what pharma's been up to for the last 20, 30 years.
It's
Yeah.
an interesting convergence of what you describe as being them kind of hitting a wall for new treatments and techniques and things they can make money off of,
Right.
and the medical establishment turning into a huge racketeering operation.
Hmm.
It's like
It
Pharma by
it
Gerald
goes from
Posner.
one right into the other.
Well, so for example, my wife's doc 2 weeks ago decided she should go on statins because
Oh,
she had her circulation tested in one leg, and both legs, but one was at 50%. But she's had something like 25 surgeries on it, and from a horrible ski accident when she was 15, and it just
mhm.
kind of just cascaded. And the statin story is a total nightmare, best I can
Mhm.
tell.
I was
Mhm.
badly injured by statins. My doctor put me on a statin called Crestor, 40
Yeah.
milligrams, which is a whopping dose. I was
Huge.
on it for about 18 months, and my memory was going, and I developed horrible muscle atrophy, and it was terrible. I never went back to him again, even though and I got rid of that doctor, but my current primary care guy keeps on utzing me to go on a different one. I'm absolutely not going to do it. And by the way, I mean, have you explored the nutritional supplements that boost the nitric oxide in your system that open up your blood vessels, like
I
Mhm.
have not.
L-arginine and
Arginine,
bee
Yeah,
citrulline.
yeah. Yep.
extract and stuff like
Yeah.
that? Because
We should.
I
Yeah.
have not. I know it's the problem. What I would like is for things like that to be looked at with rigor, which costs a fortune, and therefore pharma can afford it and the government can afford it, but they won't pay for it.
you can just go out and buy
No, I
L-arginine and
know.
take
It's
it.
it's just an amino acid. I mean, it's
No,
not,
I know.
you
But
know.
then there's this horror story of Showa making, I think it was tryptophan,
Mhm.
and people took a bunch of tryptophan, and then they all got neurological problems from the tryptophan, and it turns out it was a trace impurity in the tryptophan coming out of
Mhm.
Showa, and
Yeah.
so
You
Mhm.
have
so
to be
it's
careful about who you get your nutraceuticals from.
so in
I
any
agree.
event, so my wife's GP wanted to put her on statins 2 weeks ago because of the test showing limited circulation, but her legs all fucked up. So of course, so she wanted to put her on statins immediately. She sent her to a vein expert, and he said no signs here to do anything. Everything looks okay, considering your knee's banged up, your legs are banged up. And the statin issue came up. He said, there's no reason in the world to go on statins. Her GP is still trying to get her on statins.
Of course.
Can we go
And
back to Michael Aquino? This is depressing.
well, so
Hmm.
I went on Twitter and said, you know, I have a negative opinion of statins. My wife's doctor has a positive opinion. I'd love to get your opinions. Good news, bad news, anecdotes, deep-seated knowledge, anything. I'll take it. I got like 500 answers. I would say 495 of them were, don't touch those motherfuckers.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the
496.
the doctor who put me on statins, you know, back then when that happened to me about 2006 or 7, there was a page on the what is it, pro Politico or pro something page on their website that showed how much money your doctor was getting from the pharma industry in, you know, supposed lecture fees or whatever.
That was supposed to be
disguised it as.
stopped, but I'm not sure they did.
Yeah. My doctor was getting paid $40,000 a year from AstraZeneca, the manufacturer of Crestor. And he was getting all together, he was collecting $250,000 from all the pharma companies in
Yeah.
a year.
That's
Jeez.
pretty, but
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that person should be hung from their balls until dead. And so, so I did a poll to get it because asking for comments requires people sort of take the time, and therefore you're going to get the people who are most emotionally charged about it. So you're going to get a biased sample size. So I took it just a poll. So you just say, you know, yes, no, never been on them, that sort of thing. And 62% of the people who were themselves or a family member on statins had a minor or major side effect from the statin.
Yeah, they're nasty. They're terrible.
Yeah, so I wouldn't, and there's no, they correlate heart attacks with high cholesterol. They correlate statins with low cholesterol, but they don't correlate the forced lower cholesterol with less heart attacks or longer longer life.
Yeah, the whole thing's a shuck and jive.
Yeah,
and it's amazing
Agreed.
that the doctors are they're so lacking in intellectual curiosity
They
that
don't have any
they won't even
understanding.
look into it themselves.
They have no understanding.
Well, everything good in your body is made from cholesterol.
Cholesterol turns out, so the side effects, the side effects, for example, are early onset dementia because your brain needs cholesterol to function.
Absolutely.
And it's all of a sudden you go on statins. I have coffee on Saturday morning. The guy said, "Oh yeah, the statin fucked up my hands completely and leg pain and just what my wife needs." And but early dementia, rapid onset dementia is one of the many side effects that came up where they said, "Oh
Sure.
yeah, my wife was a zombie."
It probably demyelinates all the neurons in your brain.
Right.
No,
So in
sorry.
any event, I give advice to people, and I said, look, if you go on any new drug, go on Twitter, search the name of the drug, and see what they're talking about. And what you'll find, for example, my wife got fucked up totally by a drug called Keppra, and you go on Twitter, and it's all there. The whole story is right there. So
what did that do?
Well, my wife went on it as an anti-seizure med because she had an event that I think got misdiagnosed, but in any event, some big event. I've done CPR on her twice, and it made her angry as a motherfucker. Now we all are married, so we know what anger can be, but this was irrational levels. But she wasn't quite nuts enough to say she was really nuts, but she was nuts. And I spent 2 hours on a Saturday night talking to a neurologist. And when we got to Keppra, he said, "How long has she been on?" I said, 3 months. He says, "That's the Keppra. You're seeing the Keppra." So I actually had to have her institutionalized for a couple days as she detoxed off the Keppra. And
what a nightmare.
And you go on Twitter, if you search Twitter, you search Keppra, you'll see people talking about being angry and enraged, and they don't know how to control their emotions. It's all there. It's all there.
My mother had a seizure event as a teenager, and they put her on Dilantin as a teenager in the 1940s, and she was on it until she died. And so And not until she died, until a few years before she died. And finally, the one of her doctors finally looked at her and went, "Why are you on that?"
Well, my
Like,
wife is on
it,
Dilantin, it turns out.
I,
And
I like, yeah, okay,
well,
yeah,
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
either, but here's the problem was my wife started getting what's called cyclic vomiting syndrome, which is just a symptom, right? It's one of those ones that's just a symptom. And she'd start throwing up and she'd throw up, 40, 50 times,
Oh,
right? And it would start instantaneously. She could be sitting at dinner and all of a sudden run from the table and start hurling. And it went on for years. And then one time she had a mild case of it, and she's always wiped out. She had a mild case. And I was talking to her after it, like she just threw up once or maybe twice. And I saw cognitive impairment. And I actually took my sons were visiting. I said, go talk to your mom. Is she all there? Right. And they came back and said, no. And then I was talking to a friend whose son had a serious seizure problem. And I said, well, what are the symptoms? He says, well, he'd get nauseous, and then we'd set him down in a safe place. He'd have a seizure. And the nauseous part clicked. And so I actually said to a neurologist, I said, I think my wife's vomiting is a seizure. And so they put her on Dilantin, and it stopped. And so it really worked well. Then what happened? They had her on 4 hits of Dilantin generic, and she was doddering, and I couldn't figure out. She seemed to just be aging quickly, which was consistent with her health problems at some level. And then she went right off a cliff. And I took her to the ER, and they did blood work, and they said her Dilantin levels are through the roof. And they kept her in the hospital for 4 days so they could prevent her from having a heart attack. And I, on a hunch, I called her pharmacy and I said, could you give me the history of her Dilantin prescription? They said, well, she was getting Mylan, and then she got Taro last month. And I go, that was it. So she was right on the edge of getting too much. And then the Taro bioavailability was higher, and it sent her off the cliff. And so they had overdosed. They were overdosing her, and then the change in generics, which is itself kind of an evil thing, because as an old fart, you got more health problems. Your capacity to manage them is decreasing. You're getting different colored pills each month because they're sourcing it from different places. And I manage her medications for her now, and you can't keep track of them. It's very hard to keep track of them.
Wow.
I'm so sorry, Dave. I really am.
No,
I mean, no, I understand. It was like, let's make it abundantly clear that, I have family in the medical industry. My mom was a nurse. My brother was is a head charge nurse down in Manhattan. And like, I've been all around this. My mom was misdiagnosed for years and years and years. And, half of the reason why she was the way she was is because they misdiagnosed her. The woman had a systemic fungal infection, and they had her on, and they couldn't figure it out because she kept refusing to go to an actual doctor. And then when she moved from New York down to Florida, and they retired down to Florida, which she complained about because it was so difficult to move her parents down with them. But it wound up like fixing half of her problems because her doctor took one look at her feet and went, you have a systemic fungal infection. He put her on a simple, like the most mild antifungal imaginable, cleared everything up. The woman couldn't function for years. And all of her doctors in New York had no idea. Like, okay,
and
but
you lose track of where you're at. You've been on it so
yes,
long, you don't even know that that's the problem.
right.
And the problem with modern medicine, so I have experience too, besides my wife, which is I got to figure she must have cost the insurance industry $5 million. I mean, sort of that level of cost.
Right.
She's had 60 surgeries. She's been in the hospital many, many times, but I consulted for Pfizer for 20 years. I was on Merck's long range steering committee, which was really interesting because they showed us everything they were working on. It's like, whoa. And where it's gone awry turns out to be in the clinical trial part of the story. And so what happened is it used to be the clinical trials were rigorously controlled, and they were really trying. The FDA was conservative, and if they saw a problem, they made you pay dearly. So Splenda, for example, is a sweetener, got studied for 21 years before they released it. Right. Because they just say, we just don't believe. If you looked at the chemical structure of Splenda, Tom, if you boot it up, you'll look at it and you go, I wouldn't eat that shit if you paid me, right?
Right. So,
So it was the most studied release drug ever. And then what happened is, I think someone got this great idea, said, look, your tax dollars are paying for all these clinical trials, and we shouldn't have to pay for it. Pharma should have to pay for it. And they said, oh, we're up with that. And then they basically bought the FDA. And now there used to be a Me Too rule that said, if the drug doesn't improve upon an existing drug, you don't get it. Because why take the risk? Why you don't need another Tylenol or whatever. And now there's Me Too drugs everywhere. And during COVID, which was timed because of the COVID vaccine, which I have great disdain for, Biogen had a drug for Alzheimer's that was $56,000 a year. And the committee said, out of 13 people on the committee, 12 said no. One said, I'm not sure. And they cleared it. And so that's the state we're at. So now the big story coming up, I think we're going to see this in spades, are the anti-fat drugs, the GLP.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
give it time.
Oh,
give it time.
It's not even taking time. It's not even taking time. Ozempic face.
But give it time.
Yeah. But what's really interesting is like what I haven't really been following it too closely, but like, we talk about Alzheimer's, right? And I've been, we've been in the diet game for a long, long time, and, trying to manage type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all this. So my wife and I have spent a lot of time doing kind of amateur level research on this stuff, and some of it on ourselves. And I think the last thing I heard about Alzheimer's, the best way to describe it is that it's just diabetes to the brain. And, if you look at it that way, all of a sudden you realize, oh, well, maybe that's the problem. And again, it goes back to, our low carb diet, or our low fat carb diet, high fat, low carb diet's better. This whole discussion about cholesterol, I've said it many times. I look at it and I go, the lipid hypothesis of Ansel Keys is almost as dangerous as a thought as global warming in terms of how much damage it's done to humanity. And I think about it, and I think about the downstream effects of the war on saturated fat, the war on cholesterol, the war on this, the war on that, all of that stuff. And I'm like, none of that has improved human health at all. Now, I'm not saying that nutrition is as simple as that, but it starts with a decent foundation, and then we just have to stop poisoning all the other, the other foods, right? And it's funny, why don't we do that? But we're not allowed to have that conversation. And then the minute we try to not have that conversation, what happens? We have the situation that we have with RFK Jr. at HHS, where he's under complete attack on a daily basis because of the number of people the number of bailiwicks that he's, or ox carts he's knocking over, yada, yada, yada. So, we've got a lot of work to do to just, fundamentally alter the way we perceive, what it is that we say is good or bad. I saw a meme the other day, is like they keep lowering the cholesterol limits from, it used to be 340 was good. Now it's like 150.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, I've been on a mostly low carb diet since the 1990s, right? By my example, I fixed my former GP, who was in a horrible state, and she was a mess. And then when we used to go to the farmer's market, she shows up one day, and she had me and one other patient at the time, where I told her what we were doing. She had my blood, she did the blood work and everything. She's like, your blood work's amazing. I'm like, uh-huh. And she had one other guy doing the same thing. So this was back during the Atkins years. Right? That was the most sophisticated version of the low carb diet, which is not a particularly sophisticated version of the low carb diet, and then I saw her like a decade later when we were at the farmer's market, and has lost over 100 pounds. She looked great. She changed her diet completely around and changed everything.
That
And
was your
like,
doctor?
this was my doctor. She was an osteopath.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
The
And she
the
was,
doctors are amazingly siloed.
Yeah.
yes,
They
they are.
they really
And they're
and
not,
part of it's because if that's your job, when you go home, the last thing you want to do is be prowling Twitter for information on
Yeah.
your
yeah.
own career. So you tend to
Yeah, and
go
they're overworked.
away from it.
And yeah, like everything else. And they're also, when I understand, I've talked to a lot of doctors about this, they don't know anything about nutrition.
Yeah.
It's funny. You know, I, I've been around a lot of medical professionals and people who are medical professional adjacent and going back 2-3 generations now. And you're like the GPs and the osteopaths of the 50s and the 60s, they understood the chemistry better. They actually understood the chemistry, and it's just funny. It's just funny how much we've lost with all of our advanced knowledge of like the
Well,
basics.
I think it's a manifestation of a major illness in our civilization, which is overinvestments in complexity. Joe Tainter had it right, and you're
Yeah.
seeing it everywhere.
Mhm.
Medicine is like the poster child for it.
and
But
and and
it's interesting.
credentialism, Jim, just to ensure that
Okay,
I add that into it. Add
and
the
credentialism is a form of voodoo.
and faux intellectualism.
Yeah, but
Jeez, I'm batting 1,000 in these.
yeah,
I'm
You and me
yeah.
both, Dave. To be honest with you, so am I. So,
credentialed and faux intellectual.
But it's it's interesting to me how it's showing up now in the AI business.
mhm.
And I had a thought the other day about it. I might write about it in my blog tomorrow. I'm not sure about what seems to me to be a fundamental problem with AI that we're not hearing about at all,
Mm.
which is that it differs from human intelligence in one really interesting, strange way. Human intelligence is very, very dependent on a consensual agreement about reality among countless individual people who represent in their own way countless individual universes or versions of a universe or worlds. And that seems to me to act as a governor on human intelligence generally,
Mhm.
because that consensus is quietly working in the background all the time, informing you about what you should be suspicious about. And it's totally absent in the procedures of AI. And so, this is one of the reasons that AI veers into recursive hallucination,
Yeah.
because it lacks that governing procedure. And the thing about the human ability to form a consensual idea about reality is that you might have to conclude at some point that it requires something like a human soul, whatever that is. That's a very squishy term,
Sure.
but I can't think of another term that suffices.
Intuition.
Well, intuition is, yeah, well, a soul is not exactly intuition. A soul
Right.
is a state of being,
Right.
ontologically. But that's among the hardest things in the world to define, is what does it even mean to be conscious? I mean, some
Mm.
of the great scientists of our time have tried to figure that
Beyond
out.
definition, it's experiential. It's subject, not object. It's
Well, yeah,
is and
Yeah.
there
whatever it
is.
is,
Yeah.
but
It's isness.
lacking that, it seems to me that tells you why AI is probably likely to fail.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think it'll succeed at
Yeah.
things that are more mechanical.
Right.
It'll
Right.
be a
So I
very
think
good
Yeah, but how
assistant.
much mischief will it cause in the
oh,
meantime?
well, one of the problems
Unbelievable.
is we're going to use it whether it's working or not is the problem.
Right,
Much like the statins and everything else. Oh, we're
right.
gonna
Right.
do it.
Well,
We're
yeah,
going to
because
do it. No,
because
but for example, they're going to do it because, AI employees don't get pregnant, they don't get sick, they work 24 hours a day, things like that. And so it might produce an inferior product, but it will produce one that satisfies the capitalist system. And until, of course, we hit that wall where we find out that no one has a job and we don't know how to function in a world where no one has a job.
Yeah, and the other thing right behind that is this whole conundrum about how we're going to power all of the AI servers, you know, with the data centers. And at the same time, that we have pretty good indications that the petroleum situation and the fossil fuel situation is much dicier than a lot of people realize, especially, especially American oil production.
Well, as of right now, I wouldn't. This is not a that's not a conversation for today or tomorrow, because as always, like everything else, I firmly believe in the law of diminishing marginal utility. I refuse to get off of that, because it's the fundamental way humans respond to stressors and to inputs. And that is, at a certain point they say, well, I've got enough of this. It's been raining for 8 days up here in Tennessee. I've got enough water stored. I don't need any more water. I'm good. Right now, like my tanks are all overflowing, and the water's going down the canal to the right of to the north.
Yeah,
of my
my wife
driveway.
worries about wasting water, and I'm on a lake that's 500 feet deep. So
Yeah, so yeah, like really, okay.
Do you have a bucket with a long string?
I could do, and I have a stream going right by my house, so
there you
I go. We're okay. As a prepper, I've got a good start.
Yeah, no. So from that perspective, but it's the classic thing. It's the same thing with where we are right now. Like, everybody should be worried about not what the price is we're paying for a barrel of oil, but who can actually deliver the barrel of oil. That's a big deal. In the same way that who can deliver the gallon of water, who can deliver the or the amp of energy, amp of electricity, yada yada yada, right? The coulomb of electricity or whatever, right? So, like, that's where I'm not worried about those things, because I know that when the price signal reaches a certain point and it's not, then other technologies will take over, because that's what the investment cycle does, because that's what humanity does. Ultimately, we'll move away from burning fossil fuels or burning,
Nukes.
I hate to call them,
Nukes.
we'll move to nuclear power of one form or another, first fission, then thorium, then fusion or whatever, and we'll just move on, and then we'll use them for different purposes, and I'm not worried about those things. I never have been.
Says the mayor of Easter Island.
Look,
I worry about those things.
There are other things that we should worry about, where humanity says, oh, by the way, we consensually hallucinate some other bullshit, I don't know, the lipid hypothesis. This is my fun. This is where or climate change, or these other things. These are consensual hallucinations, and one of the things that I worry about more than anything else. And Jim, you're speaking my language here. I'm like having Philip K. Dick flashbacks to when I was 13, reading The Unteleported Man and Ubik and all these books. And seriously, yes, the consensual hallucination of what is reality is they're trying to use that. They're trying to use AI through social media and the media and everything else. And now we're just getting all kind of like Marshall McLuhan on, right? At this point, it's a consensual reality where people are hallucinating about shit that's not real.
Well,
and
so the climate change narrative is one of the most amazing to me.
Which one?
I agree.
The climate change. Climate change. And I actually was agnostic on it, because I realized that I wasn't close to being an expert, and I knew how much time it would take and this and that. And a couple people challenged me, said, "Oh, but how do you know it's real?" And I had happened to be speaking with the Secretary of Energy the week before, and he flinched when I said I was agnostic. And so I told him that, and I said, I gave him there's no credible scientist who doesn't believe it story. And one of them said, "Oh, yes, there are." And I said, so I sort of snapped a little. I said, "Okay, send me some fucking names." And I expected to get names of, Joe Blow from, Sheboygan State College, of who the fuck cares, and with no expertise whatsoever. And he sent me names of people from elite universities around the world. And I said, okay, but these guys probably shot down a model, which is now being interpreted as therefore it's not true. And therefore, so I start Googling the guys, and that's not the case. These elite scientists were saying this is horseshit. And I go,
Co-founder of
okay,
Greenpeace. I've had him on my show a
yeah,
couple
yeah, yeah,
times.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
I
done
know that.
he's like burned more.
Right. And
Mhm.
and 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 these guys were not just saying, look, it's sketchy. These guys are saying it's crap and
Right.
it's crap science and there's no evidence. And I'm going, holy shit. So the first big lie is there's no credible scientists who don't believe it.
Mhm.
And then I dug in. The further I dug, the crappier it got. And so one day I sat down with Konstantin Kaysin, who gave a brilliant speech at the Oxford Union on climate change. Absolutely brilliant. And I said, how long did it take you to figure out climate change was crap once you dug into it? And he said, a couple hours. And that's all it takes. But the people don't do it.
Right.
Now it's going away because it's in the way of the AI story. So it's even Bill Gates is now saying they overestimated it and therefore it's not as big a deal. And I'm going, okay, they've now officially abandoned climate change. It'll take
Right.
a while, right?
Mhm.
There'll
It's
still be pockets of
it's
flaring up of climate change
But
enthusiastic.
it's purely because they need a safe face for why we either got to do nuclear or drill more, and that's to
Right.
power AI. And why
That's
do we need to
exactly
power
right.
AI?
That's
Because it
exactly
is a
right.
power projection mechanism, no
Right.
different than climate change.
Right.
That's exactly
And
right.
it's funny, just to remind everybody, the first conversation that Dave and I ever had together was on my podcast where we went through our evolution of how we came to be not climate skeptics.
How do
You
you
pick.
remember that? How do you remember that?
I
No,
have a
no credible scientists. I mean,
I have a
COVID.
I hate to say this, Dave, but I have a ridiculously good memory, and it's actually a fault because I have such a good memory about things that I don't take notes and keep notes, and then when I need to call stuff back, and some things get jumbled. Like I
Right?
have to. That's when I start getting myself into trouble because I misremember like the order of events,
So
right?
let me guess. You use Grok.
A little bit, just to check dates and facts. To be honest with you, not a
Right.
lot
I
beyond
use it
that.
pretty casually myself.
Yeah,
Tom,
right.
it must be all that butter you've been eating.
It is. It's part of it. But no, I'm not that serious. But Dave and I said when I first asked Dave to be on the podcast and reached out to him, and he said, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" I said, "Well, we're too old. We're too old. Friggin' obnoxious
Chemists.
chemists. We're like, let's talk about how climate change sucks." And Dave's like, "Sounds great. Let's do it." And then we did. And for me, it was about when they started pulling the CO2 thing. I just went, what? We're going to turn plant food into a poison?
Right. But then you start noticing headlines like that there's pandemics of kidney stones. And I'm going, let me see if I got this right. So let's assume climate change is roaring along.
Right.
And therefore assume the temperature is going up a degree every some number of years. And I said, so I live on a lake. If I move uphill by 400 yards, the temperature drops about 4 degrees on average. And,
Right.
and as a consequence of that, am I going to get kidney stones because I live on the lake where up on the hill behind me, they're not getting kidney stones? I mean,
Right.
is that what you're telling me? And then the most preposterous claims start getting made. And then you realize that it's just mindless. It's just
I just look at it and go, why do you hate trees? Okay, that's what I say. I was like, okay, so you believe in climate change. Why do you hate trees? Why do you like to starve trees? I don't understand why you should starve trees. Trees have a vote. They're real, and and then even better, the better one is like, why do you hate Norwegians? Do they not? Do they not get up? Do they not allow? Aren't they allowed to farm? Like, wouldn't it be better? Like,
they're
and then
not. Ironically, they're not.
right. And here's the funny thing is like the longer this has gone on, the more we realize that 180 ppm of, and this is something I want
We're
to talk about,
starved.
is 180 ppm of CO2 in the atmosphere is literally like the starvation point of the planet where life can literally stop working, right? And so us being at 3 times the starvation level, that's supposed to be catastrophic. Okay, how about this? They defined a low point in history as the status quo.
Mhm.
This is good. This is a classic prevention principle, communist horseshit idea of, as opposed to anything else like appeal to authority, appeal to genetic fallacy, blah, blah, blah. Nope, we have a new logical fallacy, appeal to the status quo. That whatever was before must be good, and therefore any deviation from that is bad.
So I debated Steve Keen on Zero Hedge on this, and he totally dominated the debate for at least the first half, and in which he made all these claims. And then I started pulling out plots and went bam, 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 bam. But his fatal mistake was he said civilization will be gone by 2040 or something. And I go, okay, just blew your head off. And there's surreal things out there like for example, it was warmer in the 30s than it is now. It was warmer in the Middle Ages than it is now. You know, there's just a friend of mine's written, I think, will be the best book on the subject. Unfortunately, and it's coming out this month or next month, and it very well documented, very thoroughly done, really hard to refute, and I've seen drafts of it, and the problem is it's arguably a little too late. 2 or 3 years ago would have been timed perfectly. People are going to say, I don't need to read a book now. I know source. But when I debated Keen, I went on Grok and I said, name 20 prominent scientists who say climate change is not a problem. And it gave me a list of 20, and I recognized about 18 of the 20. And they're famous guys like presidential advisors and stuff like that. And then I said, name 10 solar physicists, which, by the way, are the guys who study where all that heat's coming from, and who think climate change is a crisis. And Grok came back and said there are no definitive statements by solar physicists saying climate change is a problem. There are no solar physicists on the planet who ascribe it to anything but solar cycles.
Yeah, I agree. And here's one for you, just to go back to Tim's argument about consensual hallucinations and whatnot. How about this? What bothers me about the whole process is that man is somehow divorced from nature, that we're not part of the system, right? That man-made is a pejorative, right? Now, the question I have for everybody is, well, if you believe in Gaia, if you believe the planet's got a either for the watermelons in the audience, all right, green on the outside, red on the inside, that if you believe that like the planet's a thing,
I forgot about that one. That was good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well then why wouldn't the planet, who's worried about getting cold again, why wouldn't it tell a whole its dominant species, go out and find all the carbon and burn the shit out of it and put it in the atmosphere in order to defend the planet from what's going on, especially when you start to really think about what's going on within the solar cycles, within the magnetic field, with all the other things that are happening. I'm like, no, we're likely to get really freaking cold again, and we need to buffet that. And how do you buffet that?
Let's underscore that point. The solar cycles are about as rhythmic as the tides. I mean, they're unbelievable. They're unimaginably rhythmic for reasons that aren't clear to me, but they probably understand why. We're about to get cold. We're about to get cold.
Well, that and what Tom said is we are part of it in the same way that you don't go, oh, the 100 trillion bacteria in my gut. Those are part of you. They're connected to your brain, the gut-brain axis. There's the Alan Watts quote, in the same way the ocean waves, the earth peoples. You're part of it.
We have driven a lot of species into extinction.
But that might be, if you run this simulation 1 trillion times, that might be as normal as puberty.
Yeah, still, you still got to ask as a sentient being if you can prevent being so rough on your species neighbors.
Absolutely. But it's also help them after you've helped yourself. Help them with their gas mask after yours is on. But it's also, I don't believe that. I think it's intricately complex, like cellular biology, to where what Tom was saying, it could vary. Is it conscious? Is it just a feedback? It doesn't matter, really. It might be a thing where it's like, produce these things with 2 legs and they go around fucking each other, but one thing they do is they just burn everything and build everything. And that's just a natural feedback system, no different than the release of insulin or testosterone or ovulation, or it might just be that.
And then there's the interplay between atmospheric CO2 and ocean CO2 levels and coral growth and this and that and everything else. We only talk about one aspect of the carbon cycle, and we don't talk about, sequestration and carbonate rocks and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, it's all tied together, folks.
And the Earth is fine. I think, as George Carlin said, we'll go away. The Earth is fine.
Exactly.
So speaking of sequestration, the plans to solve it, the dumbest of all the plans, turn out to be the idea of sequestering the CO2 because you got to put it somewhere, and you go, okay, so you're going to leave it there forever, and so one day I'm sitting and there are people who have said, look, here's how dumb it is. They actually said that the plants are taking in CO2 and putting out oxygen, but they're not doing it as efficiently as we thought. And therefore, the plants are part of the problem. We should cut down the trees and bury them. And I'm going, you got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me, right? So one day I'm sitting in a thesis defense by one of my colleagues who's very smart. He's smart enough to know how to exploit the climate change narrative to get money out of the system, right? That's why all the scientists sign off on it, because they're paid to. It's $1 trillion. It's $1 trillion grift.
I agree.
And they're doing a sequestering thing. So he studies something it's cool chemistry, it's fine, and he's figuring out how to pay for it by sequestering CO2. So he builds, and he takes calcium hydroxide and he sequesters CO2 as calcium carbonate. And you go, okay, so what do you do with the calcium carbonate, et cetera, et cetera? But I'm sitting there bored out of my ass. So I do a little Googling on my phone. And I said, let me ask you this. I said, if you plant, and I'm going to make up numbers completely, but here you go. I said, if you plant a white pine sapling, it will sequester, 10 tons of CO2 over its lifetime without you doing anything. Can you beat that technology? And they start giving this argument about, well, but it'll die. And I go, so you then plant another. Right. And then afterwards the PI, who's a friend of mine, comes up to me and says, well, it's actually crazier than that because all of the calcium hydroxide sequesters the CO2. Where do you get calcium hydroxide?
Oh, that was my question.
You thermalize calcium carbonate. You thermalize calcium carbonate. So you take calcium carbonate. That's where you get your calcium hydroxide from.
Isn't it?
This is the point. Is like all of this is anti. It's using it. They're trying. Look, I'm firmly convinced now that the whole climate change thing is no different than what they've done to diesel engines. Right?
It's one of two things. They're either satanic, it's a spiritual, or it's a power control mechanism. It all happens to be something where, by the way, we got to track you. By the way, you got to do less of this.
And I think that is the best model, actually. I think that is the best model.
It is, because and how do you what do you do to make efficient human action more inefficient? Because if you can make it more inefficient, then you can control their output.
Because
and
then they need you. They need you. If they can take it, then they need you for it.
The war on transportation at every level is the war on human economic development. Okay, and making us less energy efficient is the goal. Like everybody who complains about these wind turbine blades. Oh my God! And then we have to bury them in the ground. You can't do anything with them because they're made from these ridiculous composites that can't be burned or done. We can't do anything with them other than bury them in the ground. I'm like, if I'm Davos, I'm like, yeah, that's a win. That was a design feature. How do we get them to spend all of this energy to get an energy negative effect and then have a fucking nightmare and then watch all these people have wasted their lives in digging a hole and then not just filling it back in again, but wasting their lives digging holes, filling them back in, and then burying themselves while they're filling them back in. That's what this is about. It's anti-fucking human. And I'll be honest with you, it's distinctly fucking European. So no, sorry, folks, because they don't want the United States to win, because this is just old colonial bullshit over and over and over again. The minute the United States said, no, I want out of this, we're the only ones who have to put DEF on our fucking diesel engines. They took beautifully efficient things like diesel engines and made them into Rube Goldberg devices that literally destroy themselves in 50,000 miles. And are $10,000 too expensive to make. My
car turns itself off its street lights or stop signs and turns itself back on.
Yes.
As some sort of ruse to pretend like it's saving energy.
Right. You know how I look at it?
And only Americans have to deal with this bullshit, by the way. Nobody else has to deal with it. Go to Mexico, and every car's got a manual transmission, and They weigh 800 pounds and they get 60 miles to the fucking gallon. And they're all driving, 3-cylinder Nissan. Every cab is a 3-cylinder Nissan that you could never buy in the United States. I'm serious, guys. It's retarded. We, as Americans, are literally regulated into the ground.
The American people, not the government.
Yes.
I was gonna say,
No.
how I look at it is like the FBI, we just can't find anything. After January 6th, you saw them do what they can fucking do. We can't clean up California, and then G visits California, and that place looks spick and span. Hey, we just can't handle this power thing. We gotta. What about aircraft carriers and subs? Put nukes on those from the 50s till now. Those work there. So whenever there's like real power projection for the power elite, oh, it all works fucking great.
Exactly.
Except when we need it, then all of a sudden we can't do it.
Nah, we can't do it.
The idea of putting a nuke on a boat
Should scare the shit out of everybody.
Right, but it's so interesting because people are afraid of nukes. I go, and you're going to put it on a boat?
Well, nuclear submarines in the 50s were breaking through the ice live, televised to Eisenhower and Khrushchev.
I know.
What?
In the 50s.
Okay, wait. So the biggest threat to humanity is not climate change or statins or any of the other things. The biggest threat to humanity is the fact that we have regulations here in the United States where every nuclear power plant, fission reactor, has a big pool of rods. Remember Fukushima? They have a big pool of water cooling these old spent fuel rods that we are disallowed to move on a fucking flatbed to the salt mines of Utah to finish off, right? We can't put them on our roads because everybody's afraid that there'll be an accident and we'll have nuclear rod material laying out in a cornfield in Illinois or wherever. Like, okay, but if during a hurricane in Florida, if somebody can't get in there with enough diesel fuel to keep the pump running, those melt down. And then imagine that happens during, I don't know, an X-class solar flare that takes out the fucking grid for 3 weeks.
Or a war.
That's the end of human civilization, folks.
Wasn't one of the nuke plants in Ukraine or Russia? Didn't one of them get what was on fire, getting hit by some drones? About a couple of weeks ago? Was there a nuke plant that had a fire going on?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Meaning I didn't hear that. That's what I actually meant to say.
There's a great book called Energy by Richard Rhodes, the guy that wrote Making of the Atomic Bomb. And yeah, he goes through and he's like I've had him on the show. He's like a lefty guy, but he goes through the whole book, and at the very end, he's like, not only is nuclear the answer, he was like, it's comically safe. And he's talking about the salt pits and the mines, and the only thing they got wrong with those were they're actually safer than they thought. That when you put these things here, the heat from the whatever the spent shit actually slowly causes like this weird form of osmosis for the salt to start calcifying it into its own like salted brick under a mile of salt. He's like, he's like, you'd have to make a concerted effort to drill down and break this apart for it to leak. And it's a mile, not just below the surface, but below the sarcophagus is like a mile. So it's not going into, and it's in his entire premise of the book.
And the next gen nukes apparently can use those spent rods now.
You can go back down and get them. But his whole premise of the book is no matter what, it's always you go to denser and denser fuel types from the dawn of time till now. That's what you track with society.
Are you seeing any evidence that Donald Trump is able to overcome these obstacles and regulations?
Fix this?
It'll be absolutely.
And the big thing that that's I see it. The executive orders are very clear on this. The other thing is that we need to move beyond these Gen 1 light water reactors on uranium-238 cycle, right? Those are the dumbest shit imaginable. Honestly, they are the least safe. They produce plutonium, which is the whole purpose of the Department of Energy is just an outsourced subsidiary of the DoD to make nuclear bombs. There's multiple generations of nuclear reactors out there, like pebble beds, and just go look up Gen 1 through 4 nuclear reactors, and you'll realize how quickly how much great technology is already out there, and we're still and they just kept us on these Gen 1 reactors forever and a day for no other reason than because they wanted to make nuclear as unsafe as possible. Because again, if your goal is control, to Tommy's point, then you can't make us more energy efficient and more energy predictable. Because again, energy volatility is their control mechanism. Be it oil volatility, access to nuclear power, so responsible nuclear power, any of it. The goal is always don't let people move around. Don't keep them on a basically an energy drip feed as much as humanly possible.
I think the next
uh,
question would be, is the capital going to be there to finance
Oh yeah.
a new generation of
Oh yeah. Oh
nuclear?
yes. Without a doubt. The capital there. This is now we start getting into how they're going to take the money control system away from the Federal Reserve, hand it to the Treasury, and deploy the capital directly
So
through.
what do you think Kevin Warsh
the-
represents now in this picture?
He represents the fundamental sea change at the Federal Reserve to move it away from being the monopolistic issuer of new monetary units to devolving the Fed back to what I've been saying for years is an Exim bank for Eurodollars. Basically, just make it a you make it the lender of, go back to its original design, lender of last resort for the domestic commercial banking system and an enforcer of the par value of the dollar in offshore markets.
So what will it not be doing any more of?
It will not be doing QE. It will not be doing balance sheet expansion. It will not be doing banking system bailouts of the type and kind that we have seen.
And it's another thing that I find
see,
a little
that's
bit
interesting because very few people are saying that, and I agree with that. I agree with that.
I find it confusing.
Yeah, very few people are saying that, Dave, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is because most people live in this fucking stupid goddamn British central bank
Well, but
model
it's
of
not
debt
just
and
Keynesianism.
Let Jim
It's not-
finish
Go ahead.
thought.
I'm
Let
sorry.
Jim
Go
finish
ahead.
his
Go ahead,
thought.
please.
Well, I just wonder, Kevin Warsh made a big statement the other day, and he said one of his prime ambitions right now is to reduce the balance sheet of the Fed. Can you explain exactly how that works and how he might be able to reduce it? What do you suppose the theory is about that?
It's not that terribly difficult, especially considering that most of the mortgage-backed securities that are on the Fed's balance sheet right now were put there in 2008 and through 2009. So they're 15 to 18 years old. They were all 30-year mortgage-backed securities. So we're in the last 10 years of their maturity profile. So they're all just going to, he just won't buy them back. They'll just go away and he won't replace them. And the same thing he'll do with the treasuries. If the treasuries mature, they just won't buy more that's how, won't buy more to replace them. That's what Jerome Powell did. He just let them run off the balance sheet and then they went away. And now the Treasury could issue new ones, but the Fed wasn't buying them, right? Now they did some buying and selling. They changed their maturity profile. They did all sorts of things. It's not as simple a mechanism as that. It's more complicated than that. But they're managing a bond portfolio, and what he's going to do is just manage that bond portfolio to get the Fed out of that scenario.
So he's going to do the same thing the Russians and the Chinese have been doing.
Yes, and we're going to move to a sovereign wealth fund. And we're going to monitor. And this is why I'm like, everybody I think has this wrong of what's going to happen. I saw something the other day, like one of the Mises Institute guys was, screaming that Warsh was, bad for gold. I'm like, are you kidding me? Warsh is going to be the best thing that ever happened to gold because the United States has a stated policy that they want to manage the asset side of the balance sheet. So what's the assets on our balance sheet? Gold, Bitcoin, this, that. And if you've got debts and you've got assets, if you raise the value of the assets, you've now offset some of the debt. And again, if you only talk about the money supply without talking money demand, if you only talk about the debt side of the balance sheet as opposed to the asset side of the balance sheet, you're only engaging in half of the analysis. And there are multiple ways to change the asset profile of the United States. And so that's why they keep arguing Besant, Trump, and all the rest of them. We're not arguing, look, let's grow. We're not grow our way out of it. That's a poor way of putting it. Let us just unlock these assets that have been sitting dormant. We have hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of assets just sitting dormant
Some of them are not being marked to market, though. Some of them are just
Yeah.
crap. So they're
Right.
just going to go off the balance sheet that
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, as I see it, is that there is a serious question of who will be the buyers of U.S. debt,
Mm-hmm.
and that will cause problems. And so I think one can make an argument that U.S. interest rates could soar.
I think that it was interesting. I was having this conversation this morning with my with Dexter White. We were actually talking about this stuff. We were talking about, the situation with the sell off on the long end of the yield curve. And I said, imagine, I always make the point that I always watch every quarter point on the 10 and the 30. Like when we approach the next quarter point, 5%, 5.25%, 5.5. That's usually when central banks kind of show up. If you just look at long-term charts of, either daily or weekly, let's look at like weekly charts, you'll see that, like, if you just draw a line at every quarter point, you'll see support and resistance show up all over the place in those charts, right? And that's usually central banks coming in and like managing their personal portfolio of treasury assets to, relative to their currencies and their bond markets and everything else. I was surprised the other day when I saw the 30 blow through 5, the 10 blow through 4.5 without any resistance at all, right? We had a 50 basis point move.
Very quick.
It was very quick. So I immediately said, okay, this is a more structural problem right now than we've seen in the past. Okay. So now we got to back up to 4.75 on the 10-year and 5.25 on the 30. What happens at 6 on the 30? And it was interesting. Dave, you and I have argued, sparred about this. I say spar, not argue. Spar on this issue is what, answering your question, would you buy a 30-year treasury bond at 6%?
If you had to hold it. If you had to hold it.
That's a good question. I don't know that I have that answer, but what I'll say you is this: if you had to hold it. But we know that if you had to hold it is not really necessarily reality. You can make a market in the bonds and you can sell them and buy them and everything else.
Someone has to hold it.
Someone does. And everybody in the market has a different need for that debt, right? Right. So that's why we make markets, because there's you and there's me and there's Jim, but there's also the bond portfolio guys. There's the pension portfolio managers. There's all these other people. What's interesting about this, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was talking with a friend, a patron of mine who's a bond guy, and he was like, if you look at some people who are sitting there, they're about 10 years into their 30-year mortgage that they bought when interest rates were really low, and they could now buy a 20-year note paying 5%, and they're offsetting most of the risk of their mortgage if they were to hold their mortgage to maturity, which they're going to hold their mortgage to their maturity unless they have to sell the house, because where are they going to get, why would they sell that market? Why would they sell that house and they have to take a mortgage 6.5%? They could just buy a 20-year note and offset the risk of the note. And
but
Bob's your
people
uncle.
do have to sell houses, though. That's the problem. People do have to sell houses.
Agreed, but other people need to buy houses.
That's right, but it'll now be at a much higher rate.
Yes, but those are different people in different scenarios. What I'm saying is there's some people that are going to just. All I'm saying is that as price goes up, law of diminishing marginal utility takes over, and all of a sudden, people who may have been willing to sell previously may not now, and I think when we get to 6%, there's going to be a lot of people out there going to be like, if I could convert some of my overpriced equity position and buy a 10 at 5.5 or a 30 at 6%, I may just jack out completely and rotate out of overpriced stocks into underpriced bonds and let it ride for a few years. And then we may go back and as always, we'll go back and forth. What matters is not that
Why
dynamic.
Do you say underpriced bonds?
Well, it's underpriced relative to the price of equities. If equities can't get you the same return or can't get you a return with a risk that you're willing to take on with the equity.
Well, but what you just described, the equities will reprice.
Yeah, partially. Again, it's a give and take. All I'm saying is that markets they're not efficient. I don't believe in the efficient market
No.
hypothesis anymore. But
Not
I
a
will
bit.
say that markets are more efficient than we give them credit for, and at this point in time. And case in point, like right now, what Trump is doing is he's driving capital into the United States, and we're in. I think a lot of other countries are in a potential for a doom loop. This is where you will hear me start to talk about where things get out of control. The longer oil prices stay up, the more Trump is, I think, putting a lot of more vulnerable actors in the market in trouble because because we're watching a dollar liquidity crisis, not crisis, but spasm is beginning to unfold here. Gold is down, silver is flat, oil's up, bonds are getting sold, and some of that money is moving into equities. Right. But in general, there's a lot of people out there selling bonds to buy oil. And so the big question is the same question I asked back in 2022 when Powell started raising rates. I said, we're going to find out what the American economy can handle in terms of interest rates. And Powell's betting that we can handle 5.5% better than everybody else can handle getting off the zero bound. And he was right. Now Trump is asking the same question, but it's about $100 a barrel oil or $90 a barrel oil or whatever the hell it is, which is, can we handle it better than other people? And if so, then the initial response is going to be yield curve control, as they sell their stocks of treasuries in order to shore up their bond and currency markets in order to be able to buy oil. And then after that is at what point do they start to fall off the cliff? And we start to watch their bonds rise in yield and their currencies fall at the same time. And to be honest with you, we're seeing that happen in Europe right now. The euro is starting to fall, the pound is starting to fall, and both of them, and both the ECB and the Bank of England are both doing interventions because I'm watching the bond spreads, and the bond spreads are clearly they're holding them down while there's a sell-off in U.S. Treasuries. And that dynamic right now is what I see for the rest of the summer.
Well, for the Europeans, it's maybe not so much a question of how do they contend with $100 oil. It's a question of whether they get any oil at all and of the right type, of the right kinds, aviation fuel, diesel. That's a huge problem. Natural gas, which is not oil, of course, but a lot of their industry is keyed to natural gas, and they've been hurting for that for 3 years now since the Nord Stream was blown up. And in fact, their industry is shuttering down. So their situation seems completely untenable.
I agree, and I think that's part of the power politics of the current situation. Is why I don't think Trump is at all worried about the timing on when the straits open up.
I just
don't think he cares.
I just wonder how long can Europe stay politically stable? Look, Europe periodically, every 75, 100 years or whatever it is, it periodically turns into a slaughterhouse one way or another.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it does.
And it's remarkably stable given the amount of trouble that's been injected into it for the last 10 years, between the almost total loss of fossil fuel resources and the imposition of millions upon millions of people from different and antagonistic cultures into their countries. I just don't know how they don't devolve completely into chaos.
It's ugly, isn't it?
It's ugly. And, you can see in the UK, the UK just seems to be absolutely verging on civil war. They've got this idiot
Not to mention
prime
loss
minister.
of civil liberties and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Getting very authoritarian.
And how is it that Keir Starmer manages to remain prime minister right now?
How does Emmanuel Macron survive?
Well, yeah.
His father helps him.
But even from a technical standpoint, they have different political procedures for changing out their leadership. In the UK, it's a lot more kind of labile, shall we say, with a vote of no confidence in Parliament gets rid of the current, ruling prime minister. And he is in effect, that's already happened with the most recent local council elections.
He's
and
not
yet
going
they can't get rid of the guy.
Yeah, they won't get rid of them until you get enough labor backbenchers to finally say, okay, that's enough. But again, in some ways, the labor MPs are in the same position that the IRGC is in.
Mm-hmm.
They can't surrender because if they do, they're going to get killed. So if they vote Starmer out, they're also going to lose their seats.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that the IRGC really can't make a deal with Trump, because the minute they're not in power and the civilian government, the civilian military and civilian government take control in Iran, with the in a peace with a peace agreement with the United States, they're all going to get killed.
Well,
Because
now
the
that you
Iranian.
raise the question, I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth action just in the last 24 hours in Iran. The last, the two things, that impressed me just since early morning is that, there were grand announcements of finalizing a deal was almost ready to sign. And then, about an hour ago, the New York Times put out a thing that said the whole thing's falling apart.
I don't believe anything that comes out of the New York Times at this point.
Well,
MOU,
they
the
have
MOU is the
they have
is
an
the
incentive to try to badmouth anything that Trump is doing,
But this is a pattern that's been replicating
Yeah.
for several months now. So it is the best bet.
yeah, it's a pretty
Well-
good bet that Iran is jerking off America one last time.
Oh, of course they are. Of course they are.
Or
And-
I say yet another time. I'm not sure it's one last time.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of
They-
course,
well,
Mr. Trump has promised to, he's promised to go back to the, bridges and power stations play and just bomb the shit out of them.
You realize that on Friday we had multiple refuelers in the air. We had
Mhm.
multiple wings in the air, and then the phone calls came in.
Yeah.
Like
Well, the two
sometimes-
things that I saw were that, the Saudi Arabians objected to doing more bombings during the Hajj, which is the annual pilgrimage of Muslims to Mecca. And something also about, was there something about Ramadan also, or during some other period?
The other, that's one, that's one angle on it. The other one, of course, is that what they're really doing is they're trying to figure out if they can get enough votes in the House and the Senate here in the United States. They're playing for time here in the United
To
States.
get what are they voting on? What are they voting on?
To vote against,
To get rid of Trump.
Yeah.
Let's make it simple. Like we have multiple calls from the intelligence agencies and multiple dog whistles over the last 2 or 3 weeks that these guys are making a move now, and they're trying to figure out what they can do to get rid of Trump.
what might they
And-
do? I mean, it's not like they're going to run an impeachment on him right now.
Yeah,
That ain't going to happen.
Well, it depends on the deal that he depends on the deal. If he goes in and he cucks out, for lack of a better, for a modern term, and doesn't get his red lines and doesn't get the pile, and he fucks up, like, dude, like he's done. Like the administration completely collapses. He does. He cannot do what he's done here. He will lose he'll lose me if he fucks this one up.
I don't think he'll allow that to happen.
I don't either. I'm just saying if he cucks out, then, but I think that that's a very low order of probability. My personal opinion is I think he's been playing this exactly the way he needs to. He knows exactly what he's up against, which is that he's got a whole group of people that are backing Iran that aren't Iran, right? And it's all the usual suspects from India to the British to the Turk. Everybody is involved.
The Democratic Party in the USA.
The Democratic Party, the rhinos in the United States, the intelligence services here in the United States. Everybody is against this, and the Pakistanis who are over there, like involved in this. I mean, I was thinking about this morning. I was talking about it for the reason I was late because I was finishing up the market report for my patrons, and one of the things that I thought about, I'm like, think about where you would have a neutral third party place. Yeah, where would you hold the talks? Neutral
Used to
third
be
party.
Switzerland.
Well, yeah, but the Swiss are not, right? We've tried Turkey in the past. That's failed. India's clearly on Iran's side because it's all the IQ 85 Indian ship captains that won't run the
Iceland.
Right. Okay. Or they chose Pakistan, right? And all three of those were traditionally fucking British goddamn satraps anyway. Like this whole thing is like just an absolute freaking nightmare because you can't use any of the Arab countries because they're stakeholders in this problem, right? So what do? Well, you pick Pakistan. What are you going to do? Go to Kabul, right? Like, you're gonna go to you're gonna go to Kazakhstan? No, you can't. So where are you gonna go to hold these talks, and actually get everybody together? So I think that this is part of the problem here, is that you've got Pakistani interlocutors who are not playing. They're not neutral. They're playing an angle. Everybody's playing an angle because they're like, so like Trump is just like, you know what? I got carrier strike groups in place. I can do the thing. I put everything in the air. Are you going to call me or not? And they called.
Well, the last
and it's
remaining the
literally
last remaining obstacle seems to be the question of whether whether Iran retains enough missile and drone power to start firing off at all the Gulf states, and the Gulf states are leaning on Trump to be very, very careful.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that our military intelligence doesn't know exactly what they got and exactly where it is.
I would agree. I think this is all about the nuclear pile. I think the only thing that Trump wants out of this from here on out is he wants the big friggin' pile of material
Yeah.
that's going to prove who gave it to Iran in the first place, or who allowed Iran to get it. And he's been very clear about this.
By the way, how do you arrive at that understanding based on the material itself? Does it have some kind of watermark in it or something?
Most nation states, depending on like how they do it, there is to those with eyes to see. I'm too stupid to understand it. There is a bit of a even from a nuclear weapon. You just detonate one, you could tell if it's Chinese, Russian, American, French.
You know from the relative abundance of the various nuclear low.
The isotopes of various
the isotope, the
recipe.
low power, yes,
Yeah.
the recipe of what the isotope mix is. Right. So the ratio of 234 to 238, 235, 238, all of those will tell you where it came from.
Do you think the Russians can be trusted to take custody of that pile?
I think that if Trump wants, I think the pile itself is not what's important. I think the pile is the linchpin to getting Obama, Hillary, and everybody else.
No kidding.
I think
no one's talking about that.
My personal, I don't know if it's uranium one or it's some angle.
Atom.
I'm serious. I think that that's what this is about. I think that Trump can prove with that pile. He's been explicit. The only thing that makes any sense to me that he's like, I know down blending with the Chinese. Do I think he believes that? Do I think he trusts Putin and or Xi to downblend the material and send it off? Sure, I believe that, but I don't think that's what he wants. I think he wants the pile because he needs to break his domestic opposition. And that's why they're so goddamn histrionic.
Hey, speaking of which, just in the last 10 days, you had Barack Obama going up to parlay with Mark Carney in
Who
Canada.
else was there? Who else was there?
Yeah, Slotkin and one other CIA character.
And Pompeo.
Excuse me, Pompeo. Yeah.
And Pompeo was there, Slotkin, a variety of others were all there. They were all getting their marching orders. And then John Brennan goes on and then John Brennan goes up the next morning and does the Monday talk show circuit.
Yeah. So aren't they violating various federal statutes by doing that? Negotiating outside of the government?
Yes. And how many times has
isn't
Barack
that enough
Obama
to nail them on?
Hasn't Barack Obama been to 10 Downing Street how many times this fucking year?
Yeah. The chatter that I hear is that he's trying to negotiate asylum in the UK.
Well, they created him, so yeah. Like, I'm sorry, but he's the 10
I thought it
Downing
was
Street.
Jolly West who created him. Okay.
I'm at the point now where the Manchurian candidate was that was nonsense. It was always the 10 Downing Street candidate. That's what I think. I mean, and I came at that. This took me 10 years of
That's
watching
still a
this.
Manchurian candidate, though.
Yes, it is. But I'm just like, it didn't come from China. It came from the guys.
I always assumed
the guys who kill our presidents.
Yeah, right. I never oddly enough, I've never associated Manchurian candidate with China, even though if you think about it, you go, well, there's some reason why they call it that.
I've never once thought about that.
Have you seen the movie?
No, I just accepted it as a term. Like,
that's exactly right.
It was all about the Korean War.
I've seen both movies. I've seen the Sinatra movie, the John Frankenheimer movie, and the
So
the
it's a
one with Denzel
metaphor, is what I
Washington.
heard.
Never even
So,
once
I
thought
know.
about it. I just accepted it as a fucking
That's the
as a
thing. You should
definition.
watch the
So,
movie.
so
ATM
speaking of
machine.
all
Both
that, speaking of
movies
all
are
that,
excellent, by the way.
where do you think we are in the prosecution stream here? It does seem like things are livening up a bit.
Yes, they are. But I don't know.
so elaborate on that.
Well, it seems to me that, well, first of all, the the DOJ has a long-held policy for not doing any prosecutions within 60 days of an election. So that gives the DOJ something like 100 days or so to get something going uh, before the election. So it seems to me that they have an kind of accelerated incentive for getting on the stick. And, they're going to have to prosecute all these various seditions in packets
So if you were
because
playing
they're all,
DOJ bingo, who would you put on the list of people who might be served?
well, I think they're going to have to start first with a kind of narrow group in the Russia collusion business.
Mm.
And that might only be like, half a dozen people.
Mhm.
In a just world, it would also include characters like Andrew Weissman and Norm Eisen. But I think they'll be stuck in another packet because
Mm.
they've had their fingers in so many things. But I think they're going to have to prosecute these things packet by packet and probably create a priority list of which packet is most important.
Mhm.
I happen to think that the 2020 election packet would be pretty important. And along with that, another packet of prosecution would be the January 6th fuckery that involved Nancy Pelosi and the people who were working with her to prevent a real accounting of objections to the electoral votes based on what happened in the swing states on
Mhm.
January 6th. And I think it would be very important to prove what an operation that was. And that would include Nancy Pelosi, Christopher Wray, and probably Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco.
Mm.
And then you'd have another packet for, Jack Smith and Mar-a-Lago. And you'd have another packet of prosecutions for Norm Eisen and Mary McCord for engineering all of the New York prosecutions against Trump.
Mhm.
And the Mar-a-Lago business would probably be folded into a Jack Smith prosecution. But there are so many cases in what amounts to a grand conspiracy that they all have a sort of discrete quality to them,
Mhm.
as far as being able to manage them, to adjudicate them. But I see a lot of that action coming along and happening in the months ahead. And
And I
and
see
one
it
more
same.
thing, Tom.
I was like, yeah, no problem.
As the sequence of these things happens, it will become a normalized background to whatever else is going on. The people will be aware that, yeah, there's a great deal of accountability now going on. It's been normalized, it's happening, and it's happening in a regularized, methodical way by the book.
And I agree. I agree. I also think that they've started that process by saying, "Look, we're prosecuting all these people for fraud in Minnesota,
Yeah.
Maine, California." They're starting that process. They're working their way up the food chain, getting rid of the money flows that fund the election fraud, that fund this, the fund, and so I think that's part of it, right? It's like, okay, we just arrest somebody for trying. Well, we just arrested 50 freaking people.
You
We
know,
did
and,
these people, and that's one angle on it. The
Weren't
other
those
side
guys
is
bottom of the food chain though? Weren't those, am I
doesn't matter.
missing something?
It doesn't matter.
they got
Let's
to
take
Well,
start
it
somewhere.
matters if they,
you,
I understand that, but you could also imagine them stopping there too. It's sort of like
yeah,
trafficking.
yeah. I
You never see a person of importance get arrested for trafficking. It's always some guy with tattoos and no fucking teeth.
Dave, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm I put I put I put long odds on the whole group of them going quote unquote, to jail or whatever. I'm not unhip to that. I'm more worried about the closer you get to the actual truth. I have to go back to what is Congress willing to do to stop them from becoming caught up in all of this. Like at some point, you have to realize that there's move and then counter move, right? And the counter move here is clearly that there's a very distinct possibility, and this is why the deal that Trump makes over Iran is so important, because if Trump loses the people over the deal that he cuts, then Congress will come in and destroy him.
Yeah, and then you're flirting with civil war too. You really are.
And then you're so it's all of it. So we have a legislature that is in full revolt. Let us not kid ourselves. Trump decided to go after 3 sitting senators. This is very important. And he got scalps. Cassidy, Cornyn, and McConnell's boy lost in Kentucky, right? So that's by the way, folks, that's nearly unprecedented in American politics. And
By
certainly
the way, people are terribly appalled by that.
By what aspect of that? Appalled by that he's going after these guys?
The Massey thing.
Oh, Massey.
The Massey thing looks.
I didn't say Massey.
Okay, but
Massey's a peculiar character. He has a veneer.
Massey is somebody's fucking asset. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've been saying it for 3 years.
I have no problem with that, except for the fact that the public saw that as a serious. I think so. Yes.
I think they'll get over it.
I think they'll get over it very, very quickly. I think Massey at this point is trying to keep himself in the loop. I was chatting with Alex Craner the other day. I was trying to explain to him about Kentucky politics. Because
Alex is like you on mood stabilizers.
But one of the things I am not throwing Alex on any shade at Alex. I'm just trying to explain that, when we were going through all this the day after the election on Wednesday, we were on Sean Newman and I said, you have to remember that Kentucky is as red a state as it comes. Massey's district is even redder than normal. And if it wasn't for the fact that McConnell's chosen boy lost the primary as well, there would be this argument that, well, maybe there was some kind of quote unquote election fraud or some, which is nonsense. You don't lose an election by 11 points. There isn't some organization within Kentucky politics, northern rural Kentucky politics, to create the mechanism. Give me the theory of how they mechanically stole the election from Thomas Massey. No, they deployed money. The Kentuckians, they saw what was going on. And
whose money?
There was Jewish money on both sides. Like Jeff Yass spent $7.5 million on Thomas Massey.
I don't know Jeff Yass.
Yeah, there you go. This is the part that nobody wants to talk about.
Well, someone should talk about it. Somebody should talk about it.
Okay, well, go look up Jeff Yass and he's a prominent pro-Israel Jewish investor. Like the Brits were on both sides of this trade. Okay. They were on both sides of this through I don't even think AIPAC is a freaking Israeli thing anymore. I look at AIPAC every time AIPAC's under trouble, they're in trouble with the people, they turn around and go, we have all this influence in Congress. Aren't we? Like, or how dumb do you have to fucking be?
I
just look at it and go, this is so
I'll agree with that. It is a little comical when they're like,
right.
You can disagree with us, not for long.
But it's not comical though. So I think the problem AIPAC has is they look like bullies.
It might just be humorous, yeah.
Well, but that's a fundamental problem. They've given up on the PR problem.
No, that's a huge.
When you've got an AIPAC person standing at the podium and saying, "We've got 50,000 lawyers on retainer who are going to come and kick your fucking ass."
It's a demoralization. It's a demoralization thing.
It's like get out the fucking flamethrower. That's how I feel when I see an AIPAC, the number one cause of anti-Semitism in this country, and it's rising rapidly.
I agree, and it's
AIPAC.
Yeah, no, that's
and the Twitter algorithm. Let's not kid ourselves.
And the Twitter algorithm.
Okay, so now what I'm getting at here is that Massey, like you look at the the Kentucky elections. Normally, Massey's running against nobodies. He gets 75% of the vote, 22% voter turnout. In presidential election years, non-presidential election years, it's like nothing. This was 34% voter turnout. And he didn't really radically improve his vote totals. Right. And
I think it was even less.
Kentuckians want Mitch McConnell gone as bad as the rest of us do. And so McConnell threw his weight behind one guy. Trump threw his weight behind McConnell's the challenger, the challenger to McConnell. He won in a landslide. And then there's coattails. And that's that. And what it proves is, and Trump went 37-0 on Tuesday. In Georgia, in Georgia's Supreme Court races, like he went 37-0 everywhere. Twitter's not real life, Dave. It's just not. And I hate to say it, but it's just not.
I actually don't read Twitter as much as you might think, but I do read articles, and I do believe that there is a growing sentiment out there that doesn't like the fact that Trump mowed these guys down.
Maybe. I just don't put too much stock in articles written by libertarians at this point, because libertarians have completely lost their fucking minds. They are dominated by the communist wing of the Libertarian Party, the Scott Hortons and the Daniel McAdams and the rest of them. These people are nothing but communists. Like Justin Raimondo, remember that Scott
I remember
Horton?
Justin Raimondo.
Okay, remember that Scott Horton got his start at antiwar.com as the guy who would insert all the links into Raimondo's articles. Raimondo is rolling over in his fucking grave as to what's going on right now. I can tell you that right now, because I was part of that. And I read every freaking article that Raimondo put out for 10 years. Hell, I ran up. When he died, I wrote a eulogy. I left it on my freaking Twitter feed for 2.5 years. And that guy would be looking at the scenario today going, what Trump is doing is correct. As a former Buchananite, as a guy who understood strategy, tactics, and where we need to go. And this is a different world than we've been living. This is a very, very, very weird place that we're in. And
we now agree 100%.
It's not just that, it's that the libertarians have made the mistake of believing that they can use online activism as a springboard to electoral success. It has never been proven correct.
I don't know who the libertarians are. The libertarians are a tiny group. I don't know what you mean by the libertarians.
You're talking about that whole like Dave Smith angle. There's a whole podcast bros thing, and I know you're part and parcel of this. I'm watching like everything happening with Tucker and Megyn Kelly and this one and that one and Dave Smith. I'm like, and it's all this big circle jerk. And I'm watching like,
and they never let me in. They never fucking let me in.
Dude, they never let me in either.
Bitches.
But hey, apropos of how Congress and the Senate may be acting, that in itself is extremely peculiar at the moment. They seem to be the Senate, with John Thune and his fellow Rhino remnants, seem to be just taking every opportunity to inflict some petty injury on Trump without really being able to injure him. So I wonder, Tom, whether they really can, could possibly succeed in impeaching him or really, really injuring the bull there.
It's a good question, Jim.
And Thune seems to be in trouble himself, a lot of trouble.
I agree. But here's the thing. And one of the things what's interesting is I was talking to a friend of mine who's both a patron and the guy that's been on his podcast a couple of times, who runs a think tank in Washington, Kevin Lynn, and good guy. And he was like, he pinged me one day and he said, and if Kevin wasn't a public figure, I wouldn't say his name. He said, you do realize that what the talk on the town around town is the Senate doesn't want to give the people any wins whatsoever. So the SAVE Act, the reason that most of them are against the SAVE Act is that they do not want to give the people any wins, because if they give them one win, they have to start giving them a whole lot of things. And the Senate really does see themselves as a kind of they're becoming like the American House of Lords. Like, look at what McConnell was trying to do in Kentucky. It's pass his seat down to his chosen person. In the same way that like the Senate is a seat that is passed down from the sitting senator to the to their chosen one afterwards, and the people really have no say in the matter. And when you start to view the way the Senate is operating, acting from that framework, it's really descriptive of what we're seeing. It's not wholly descriptive, but it's an angle on this that we have not seen before.
I fail to see their motivation.
They're just butthurt that the fact that the people are just like, no. And the fact that Trump can come in and get three sitting senators by just pointing his finger at them, that's a big deal. That's the kind of political power we haven't seen from a president since FDR.
Well, I fail to see what the motivation of John Thune and his cohorts might really be.
Again, it's petty. They're just petty. They see themselves as the real power in America, and they don't want to give that up.
It looks to me like they're setting themselves up to be crushed.
I agree.
Also, as long as we're on the subject of this, it seems to me that the Democratic Party is setting itself up to be declared a terrorist organization.
Yeah, and I think the GOP is in serious trouble as well. But
the two parties seem to be in a battle for control of the bottom of the barrel.
For the slime on the bottom of the barrel.
Well, you dig long enough and deep enough, you eventually find the bottom of the barrel, and they seem to be looking for it. So to me, it seems like the Republicans have just blown themselves up.
Yeah.
Well, but that takes away the whole 3D chess arguments to me. That you take out those three and you sort of view that as like a big win. And I still think the people are looking at that going, I don't like the way that worked.
Well, there seems to be some players in the Republican Party, in Congress and the Senate, who are not necessarily bad guys and not necessarily badly motivated or poorly or badly intentioned. I'm not sure that the party is dead. I think the party just has this parasitical overgrowth on it that has to be removed.
Well, and I think, for example, MAGA has lost so much tailwind.
Look, it's as Tom just said, it is a peculiar moment right now, and I'm not so sure that if and when the Iran problem is resolved, and I think Mr. Trump has got to resolve it quickly. One way or another.
What if Iran doesn't want to?
Well, I think they'll be bombed into the 12th century.
I'm less believing of that model.
Well, it's an option, and
all we have is our computer terminals, to look at the world through, and I'm altogether unconvinced that we know. If I had to bet right now, put serious money down, I would bet that Iran has control.
I can't really understand why you would say that.
Because I think all they have to do is wait it out.
Well, yeah, I think they have control in the way that a 13-year-old girl thinks that she has control of the household.
And she can
by just
ruin
saying
that
no,
household.
no all the time.
She can ruin that household very quickly.
Yeah, but eventually, eventually she's overcome, I think, with the weight of authority.
Maybe, but to the extent, if you believe that the Strait of Hormuz is important, and even that's debatable. If you believe the Strait of Hormuz is a problem, then every week that goes by in which things are jammed up in there is a win for Iran.
And I don't think Mr. Trump's going to allow that to go on for more than another week.
Can I ask a question, Dave, on that front? Why is Marco Rubio in India?
I have no idea why Marco Rubio.
I know why. Tell me why. Tell me why.
Because
most of the ships that are sitting in the Strait of Hormuz right now, not moving, are the ones that are Indian ship captains that refuse to run on the Omani side of the strait and move the oil. They are literally playing a double bluff game with fucking Lloyd's of London, and that's why Marco Rubio is in India. So while we're doing this, that's what's going on, and we have already routed over 50 or 60% of the Strait of Hormuz traffic away from the Strait of Hormuz. The world's being
No, wait a minute.
rewired.
Is Rubio asking Modi to tell those ship captains to get moving?
That's what I think he's there for.
Okay.
But let me present a simpler model and tell me how you can refute it. And that is, if I were an insurance company, I would not insure one of those ships. It's a lousy bet.
If
I were a captain, I would not want to be driving one of those ships.
Well, if you were a captain, you'd do the safest thing possible.
Do you realize that there are ships
which means sit tight
but there are ships going through the Straits of Hormuz right now?
There are,
and there's plenty of them going through. And
I'm
most
not
of
sure
them,
plenty's the word, though. I'm not sure plenty's the word.
Enough of them are going through that they have been given. Okay, let me put it to you this way. This is a game of, if they move through the straits and Iran fires on them in Omani waters, then that's an act of piracy from Iran, and now they're the unilateral aggressor since we're not actually attacking them. And the ceasefire's been called.
So Iran is escorting ships through right now.
They are escorting ships that are playing their game, Dave.
That's
it's a fucking game. It's nothing but a headline writing exercise.
That tells me that Iran
is not in charge. They have allies. There are differences.
No. I don't care where they get their power from. I'm just not convinced that I'm not convinced that the U.S. military has the power that it needs for this particular problem.
When you have a Congress that is put through 8 or 9 war powers resolution to stop Trump from doing what he's doing effectively, you have a Congress that is also acting treasonously.
I have no problem with that idea, but
now the question is, who's Iran's allies? Iran is not in control. Iran's allies are in control, and Iran is creating that issue. So now, how do you break that?
You play hardball with Iran.
You play hardball with everybody, and you put the pressure financially and in every other way on everyone else. You rewire and reroute the oil flow. You make a stipulation. You want to buy oil from us and you want to load up in the Gulf of America. You're not buying your shipping and P&I insurance from the Lloyd's of London. You're buying it from us now. Now, all of a sudden, it's not the same game it was before. It's a process. It's not a state function.
But
it's a process.
But the longer it goes on,
the more Iran loses. Because the more oil will route around the strait.
Inefficiently.
And we haven't mentioned the fact that they have to worry about their own oil industry and the oil rigs and the fields being queered by a lack of storage.
Yeah, which Iran? Right? Is it the civilian government that clearly wants to negotiate with Trump and get out of this thing? Or is it the IRGC that is backed into a corner that can't get out of it? I don't see them having power here. I see them playing a hand over. They're playing a short stack. As if it's a poker table, they're playing the short stack for as long as they possibly can, hoping something changes, and that somebody will give them a rebuy, meaning they're waiting for somebody else to act in such a way that they can then get some power back. And there's a lot of people out there that are not Iranian that are incentivized to keep Iran in this.
So, what are such ways that they might act to accomplish that?
Well, that's the big, again, now we start talking, we go back to why I brought up the Congress, why I brought up the war powers resolution, why I brought up the bond markets and the capital markets and all of this stuff. There are multiple, this is not about the strait anymore. This is about everything else. The strait has already been destroyed as a, Hormuz itself as a thing is already now a thing that to Dave's point, why would you load up oil on this side of the Strait of Hormuz, as opposed to over here? The UAE came out the other day and said, we're going to double. We already have a pipeline to Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman. south of the Strait,
And that's the
pumping.
Red Sea.
Yeah,
Or
well,
is
yeah.
it below the
It's
Persian
below
Gulf?
the strait, so it's below Bandar Abbas. It's on the other. It's on
Okay.
the other side of Bandar Abbas. They're right there, and there's moving upwards of 2 million barrels a day. They just put out a statement the other day saying by the end of 2027, we're going to double that pipeline, and we're going to pump 3.7 or 3.8 million barrels a day. And they left OPEC. Who's the next? Who's another founding member of OPEC that could walk away from OPEC tomorrow? Venezuela.
Mhm.
They're a founding member of OPEC, by the
Mhm.
way. So OPEC
I didn't
itself
know
as a
that.
thing, yeah. OPEC itself as a thing is in the process of being destroyed. So now, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I've talked about it in a couple of different podcasts. I haven't talked to you guys about it, but I'm like, I have a simple question for everybody in the audience. Does anybody give a shit about coal?
China sure does.
No.
does,
What
yeah.
I mean as a geopolitical construct.
No
Does
one's
anybody
paying
care about
attention to it right
no
now.
one pays attention to the price of
Well,
coal. No one
Australia's
thinks.
got a stake in the price of coal.
Sure, but right, producers and consumers, but there's no benchmark price of coal.
Right.
There's no coal futures
There's no
market.
That's
coal
right.
dollar. There's
Right. There's
no
none of this shit. There's no
military
guy out
industrial
there
coal
calling it. It's the
complex.
There's no
cocaine
Chiron
dollar,
with
right?
the price of coal running
Dick
across
Cheney
the
wasn't
street.
going
Right.
after
Yeah.
That's
coal.
what I
Yeah.
mean by that. So the price of coal is only interesting
He
to
invaded
anybody
Iraq for coal.
during extreme. The only last time coal was a story was during COVID. When we shut down the mines, we shut down shipping, we shut down the whole freaking world, and the price of coal went all over the freaking place. Right. But for the most part, coal, arguably just as important to the energy infrastructure of the world and to global trade as oil is. One could argue. One would be correct, by the way, to argue that because most Teslas run on coal, right? Because that's how
Mhm.
we, right? So but nobody cares about coal. You know why? Because there's no way to put a geographic choke point up around coal,
Besides
right?
climate change.
Oh yeah, but climate change, yes, that has been an issue for
Mhm.
coal, right? Okay, so now ask about why did we have climate change in order to stop coal? Then you move everybody into oil and natural gas, and then you create conditions where you shut off the natural gas supply in other areas of the world and make the Strait of Hormuz more important. And then you do what? You create you empower a non-agreement capable death cult and give them uranium to make nuclear bombs to blackmail the entire world around it. I can't, dude. If I was Emperor Palpatine, this is the way I would run it. But why does the world not give a fuck about coal in this respect? But all of a sudden, everybody checks the price of Brent crude every day. It's a good
Because
question.
it's at the
When
center of this
one
clusterfuck.
right, when one could argue that it's oil is just as just as diverse a market, right? There's 15 different grades of oil out there. There's two different types of coal. There's coal is sold basically on a per BTU per ton basis, right? And all of this stuff, and like it's not really all that interesting. So why is the world not interested in coal, but we're only interested in oil? You got to ask yourself that question. Then you got to ask yourself,
because
and
it's the main transportation fuel.
that's part of it. It's also found around places in the world where there are geographic choke points that can be exploited to put up toll booths to create geopolitical power.
You could say there's an analogy or similarity to Taiwan and chips.
Taiwan and chips,
And it's
single
kind of what
points
we're
of
saying
failure.
why it's like back to what you're saying earlier. What's the point of climate change? It's a way to bottleneck and to gatekeep the Gutenberg printing press, the common man can't hear the mass and anything but Latin. It's all concentric circles of cunts trying to gatekeep things. And so
And so Tommy, to your point, right now, let's think about when Trump went to China. And I was asked on a podcast, what do you hope to see out of that? I said, well, the first thing I'd like to see is a simple, the same thing I saw out of the first thing that happened when Takaishi came to visit the White House, a deal about buying Alaskan oil. Because if China wants to buy oil from Alaska and Japan, then they don't need the Strait of Hormuz anymore. And now you've rewired the world.
Oh, the
And
same
now
way
you've
that
created
censorship.
now you've created an entire incentive structure to build out the energy infrastructure to bring all of that oil and gas that's up in
And more.
Alaska and more, bring it to
It's
market and move the center of the world away from Europe and the Middle East and move it somewhere else.
So these are long-term moves, though.
Yes, they are.
I,
Which begs the question of how do we handle the short-term disruptions, which can be, the Great Depression was 10 years old. I had argued the Great Depression was 15 years old, but
Mhm.
but others would argue 10. And it's a blink of an eye historically, but it didn't feel like it as we went through it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
No, I agree, Dave. In the short term, this is a gambit on Trump's part. That is a big problem. I'm not gonna lie to
But
you.
you mentioned a pipeline. I don't know whether it's above ground, underground. I don't know what kind of pipeline it is. But let's say hypothetically it's above ground. The Iranians can take it out.
Yeah, but it's
They
a land-based pipeline. It's very easy to fix.
very easy. One, it's very easy to fix. Two, and then what's the move for the UAE and Saudi Arabia then?
I don't know.
I know exactly what it is. Let's take Bandar Abbas.
to in
No,
a,
wait, no. You laugh. Go
I
look at a
can't.
map.
No, I can't even spell Bandar Abbas. So
Okay, so what is
Bandar,
Bandar Abbas?
bend over
Again,
your
what is
ass.
Bandar Abbas? Bandar Abbas is the Arabian portion of Iran, because Iran is a big. Everybody's like, you can't invade Iran. It's a big mountain and it's hard. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's impossible. Bandar Abbas is on the western side of those mountains. So anybody who takes Bandar Abbas from Iran, let me ask you a question: how is Iran going to get over those mountains to take Bandar Abbas back? This is logistics. This is military logistics. With the United States flying A-10s and everything else over the Persian Gulf and literally saying, you've got nothing you can't protect Kharg Island today. And you're going to take Bandar Abbas back from the UAE and the Saudis? Like, if I'm them, this is where you have to start really going through, looking at a map, doing the thing and going, okay, so what are your moves?
but
Like
none of this.
Iran's move is nothing.
If I go back 3 months, 4 months, none of these were issues, and now they are. So I see it as instabilities of the system that could be very disruptive.
Well,
I agree.
In agreement with what you're saying, Dave, about the whole, blink of an eye historically, but it feels like forever when we're in it. It's like just in my sphere, I look at YouTube censorship, right? I got kicked off in August 2021, and it took a while, and it felt like forever while I was in it. But then you saw, Rumble grow for all of its flaws, like 100-fold. You have BitChute and Brighteon. You have all these, what Tom was saying, rewiring of the information space. Then YouTube last October unsolicited invite me and a trillion other people back. And why are they doing it? I think they want to bring everyone back to their walled garden so during the next administration they can go back to censoring. But no, so what's the answer? So is it rewiring on the long term? Yes. So I can look at 5 years. And the short term, what was it? There's no other answer. It's extremely bumpy. But both can be true. A rewiring and also, well, then how do we get there? You buckle up.
Yeah.
I
And then
think they're both
question,
true.
I think the question I asked earlier is, is the United States capable of weathering that disruption better than its
Most of the
competitors?
world, probably.
Well, one thing that we have to do,
Resource-wise.
one thing we have to do in our country is disarm and disable whatever's left of the Democratic Party. And I think that's in process.
Consider it done.
Well, it's not that easy, but
Dave's on it.
But I'm on it. I'm voting against.
I mean, imagine what'll happen
Consider
if
that
they.
done, Dave.
Imagine what'll happen if 3 weeks from now they indict Tim Walz and Attorney General Ellison in Minnesota.
It's so goddamn funny.
But that would be hilarious. It'd be
It
great.
would just be above justice. It would be funny. That's
Well,
why
as I've said before, indictments are a dime a dozen. When someone gets leg irons is when I care.
Right. But ask yourself. I mean, maybe that's a good question.
There are weeks where decades happen.
I saw a comment from somebody the other day. They said, oh, and now you know why they had to have Tim Walz's Kamala Harris's running mate was because the the Obama corruption runs through places like Minnesota into Chicago, and now they're doing the same thing, and they've done the same thing to a lesser extent in places like Maine, right,
Hmm.
and other places. So these are stepwise questions of how do you or how do you fix this stuff stepwise.
You got
Order of
to
operations.
imagine, you got to
Order of
imagine,
operations matter.
you got to imagine that the DOJ and the FBI are going after the NGO money funnels now.
Oh yeah,
The
I think they already have.
The Soros money operation, the what used to be Arabella, now called Sunflower, the Tides
Mhm.
Foundation, that whole fucking gang of
And and to your and also to your point, Jim, the only way you actually get those systems right to poke their head up is to put pressure on them. How do
mhm,
you get the Iranians to show you where all the holes are that they've got guys with manpads and missiles and everything else? Well, you gotta
Yes,
blow up everything you can see,
fly
and then
sacrificial. Yeah.
and then go back and now make them spin up the next one and then fire and forget. And then they have their single use launchers, and then you kill them off. Same thing with bank accounts. Same
mhm,
thing, funding networks and everything else. And that's the way that a lot of that stuff is worked. And it's hideously complex. Going back to something you and we all know, right? Reading Daniel Booth's book about the Fed, she talks about the first time she met Zoltan Pozar, right? The when he was working as an analyst at the Federal Reserve, and she goes to visit him in New York, and he's like Fox Mulder in his little cubicle at the New York Fed, and he's got and he starts showing her the PDF of what he's mapped of the shadow banking system, and he's like, and this is a quarter of it. That was in 2008 or 2007 or whatever the hell it was. Like thinking through all this stuff, this is a hideously complex and large and metastasized organization that you're of networks, human networks, and funding networks. And you pick a spot, you pull on a thread and you knock it down, and you keep doing this and you keep doing it and you
mhm,
keep doing it. This is not something that's going to resolve itself in a week, a month, a year, or even maybe even I would even argue an administration. This is a this is what you have to do is you have to commit to a plan of action and a theory of action and then execute as best you can. And to Trump's credit, and and when I start looking at it this way, this is why I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on all this, because to me it's all very self-consistent that that's what he's doing, and he's poking on as many of these, pulling on as many of these threads as possible, and forcing time management onto them. It's operate for him from his perspective. It's operational tempo. You put pressure on them, and then you keep putting pressure on them. This is part of the reason why this last like 40 or 50 days of this of the Straits of Hormuz being closed, what I like to call Schrodinger's Strait. Right? Is it open? Is it closed? Is it open? Is it closed? Right? Um, it's been a little confusing. It's been. I'm not going to say it's not even been a little unnerving. I didn't sleep very well last night for a variety of reasons because I was trying to figure out why didn't bomb them on Friday. He had everything up in the air, and then we have no messaging from the administration that they've gotten any kind of a durable, bluff call and move on from the Iranians on their red
Well,
lines.
well,
And I'm
devil's
like,
advocate,
dude,
anything.
fucking blow them up and be done with it. Call it good, and we'll go home before Congress tries to,
Well,
pull the plug on the entire operation through the war power thing.
devil's advocate,
I
anything we know is if you know it, then ostensibly your enemy knows it. And I know that the excuse is used all the time for the national security
Mm.
state, but we don't know what they're doing. It's like, well, that means Iran's also like, what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah,
It's that whole thing.
yeah.
I
So
will go in
that's
agreement with something you said, I think the last or two shows ago, Tom. And I do think
mm.
it is one thing I come back to despite all the rockiness and shakiness for Trump is the general premise of like, do I think he's trying to help the United States? As a general premise, I take it as yes. It's, you get older and you're like, oh, your parents weren't cunts. They were just trying to raise you. And then you get older and you're like, oh, my parents also had flaws, but I think as a general premise, mom and dad were trying their hardest to And I do accept that as and that's a broad brush. You could say that's a low bar. But as for presidents go, it's seemingly we haven't had that in decades. So I do agree with your theory. Like in general, in general, I do think Trump is trying to help the United States, and I'm willing to give him a long, long leash with that. Doesn't mean he's
What
infallible. Doesn't mean he's not, can't be judged and all that good stuff. But that is as a general, I
So,
come back to
so,
that.
so,
If my parents are listening, I did not mean to call you guys parents. I
yeah.
apologize.
Mine can't
I've
listen
never
to both
said that.
ends,
I've
so
said a
we're
lot
good.
of horrible things on this show. I've never
So the
said
fact
that.
that
I love my parents.
the fact they trafficked you into a pedophile network's not a big deal.
Listen, listen. How else was that house going to get paid for? See me when I was 8?
I know.
You see me with
And
braces and blue eyes?
Hand jobs behind the dumpster at Wendy's. I
My
have
parents
a
are never going to talk to
slightly
me.
modified view of Trump. I think I give Trump credit for starting out intending to change things. But then he does things that make no sense to me. For example, someone very close to him is opportunistically making big bucks on these presidential tweets, for example, and on meme coins and things like that. And they're very destructive. They're very destructive. And I could interpret it as Trump saying, look, I'm just not able to do what I want to do, so fuck it, let's at least get rich. Because those
That's the last thing I imagine he cares about.
well, except you don't get to that kind of money without caring about getting to that kind of money.
Could be
At
that.
this
It
point,
could be you're at so far down the thing, you're just like, fuck it. Does that grease
Well,
the wheel?
that's my point. And so
I can,
the thing
I can,
the thing
okay,
thing
go
I
ahead.
never mention, I never care about, but I actually I to the extent that I'm going to pretend to care about it now. It seems to me that the Republicans have no chance in the midterms, but I don't know what I'm missing. It seems to me that that the Iran war itself has blown up the midterms.
way too early to say. Way too early.
Okay.
I don't. I don't buy that at all, Dave.
Okay.
Especially after all the redistricting wins. Right now, I think the general consensus, and I'm seeing that even from people who you would say are pro, anti-Trump. They're like the Republicans floor is 214 to 215. They're floor, meaning all they have to do is take like 5 friggin' toss-ups out of 20.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. One nice thing about this is we will get an answer key, to use an academic term.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very difficult to explain what I think are really destructive things that Trump does. And maybe, it's quite possible that it is sort of 4D chess, and what he's actually doing is throwing out bullshit for people to scream about, so that they're not screaming about the things that he actually cares about, things like that. What is your interpretation of, for example, first you have the resignation of Joe Kent. Okay. You just got the resignation of Tulsi Gabbard. I seem to remember the last time we chatted, Tulsi Gabbard was kind of front and center of some of these plans you guys have about how they were going to bring down the bad guys.
I think the answer to that one's really simple. Is that what you see is what you get with her husband being ill, and B, her chief deputy is an extremely capable guy. I forget his name.
She handed the baton then. She handed the baton.
He's been doing all the practical operational stuff for her.
But I'm reading stuff about the person who's going to get her position, like Stefanik or whatever her name is.
Stefanik, that's just gossip. That's just chatter. Idle chatter.
Okay.
I think that he's going to ride with this guy who was her deputy for a while, and even if he puts another actual new DNI in there who gets confirmed by the Senate, it'll be somebody who is really on the same page.
We're within the 6 months. FYI, we're also within the 6-month window where the ODNI or the acting AG can be in that position for 6 months, and we're within the window of the midterms. So, and she's not stepping down until June 30th, but there's another 5 weeks where she's now free of all the politics.
So she can deliver something.
She could deliver a lot.
Well,
That's
so
one.
now we've got 5 weeks for her to deliver something.
That would
She's
be
delivered
great.
a lot already.
She really has.
And
And I just like, and last point, I think sometimes a spade is a spade. This is very bad timing. I'm not happy about this at all, both for her personally, obviously, and
What's wrong with her
for the
husband, by the way? I missed the
it's
husband
aggressive
thing.
cancer.
rare
Oh,
bone
really?
cancer. It's bone
Okay.
cancer.
So what you're telling me is he got the jab.
Not necessarily. You got
I
bone cancer.
know.
I know.
I
might
I,
have.
I
I'm
know.
gonna be.
That
I'm gonna
was just
be.
that was just the spaghetti thrown at the walls.
Yeah.
There's the 5% of me that says, oh, by the way, she's been too effective. Kill her husband. But I'm just not. I'm not going to go there.
I know.
I don't really want to go there. Let's just leave it at that. I don't know what to do. I still don't know what to make of Joe
So
Kent.
he's going to die. He's going to die.
No, I don't think that that's
I'm not
necessarily
Okay.
true.
Okay.
I don't know.
He's going to go through an
We don't know.
ordeal.
That
your
was
whole-
a question. Okay.
Yeah, we don't know because we don't have any details.
Okay.
And Trump was very complimentary of her on the way out the door. He didn't have to be. She didn't resign today like Joe Kent did.
So
She's
what do you
resigning.
say? What do you say if the gossip turns out to be true and Stefanik does get it?
I don't
She's an
think it's gonna-
idiot. She's an
Yeah, she
idiot,
is.
I think.
I don't think she's an idiot at all.
I'm gonna
I
agree.
do think she's got, she's got conflicted interests. But
Yes, there's that.
And
not an idiot.
in agreement with Dave, what you were saying about, when I said he's at a point of like, fuck it, grease the wheels. And it could be what you're saying, let's just make money. I look at it more as you're so beaten down. To me, it's like when I'm on like the ninth show of a week and I'm 6 hours in, I'm kind of at like a fuck it point where it doesn't necessarily mean I'm consciously saying fuck it so much as I'm
You're just out of gas.
I'm not
You're out of
crossing
gas.
every T and dotting every I. And if Trump's like, these guys are making money, I'm just gonna be human. It might just be at a point where they've tried to kill him 3 times. He's essentially in his third term. He's just like, fuck it.
The premise that he's beaten down is not
Well,
real.
regardless. And then, what do you make of things like Tulsi and Kent? I'm also willing to say that like you're taking on a hyper complex Herculean task. And the car might just kind of be breaking down on the 600th lap. That doesn't
Also,
necessarily
shit
mean
happens.
you fail. Well,
I know.
you might finish the marathon and have a broken leg. You still won.
And
It's just not as
why-
good as you
But
thought.
there were
and the other
previous
thing-
discussions in this group about the importance of
No,
importance of Gabbard.
1,000%, 1,000%.
And I also don't
The engine flame out. I don't know.
don't discount the idea that the bad guys aren't the ones doing the trades.
You have to explain that a
The
little
trades
bit.
are made. The trade,
The-
but it can't be it's got to be a person very close to Trump, though. It's got to be a person.
No,
very close to-
I've watched. There's as many counter signals where Iran says one thing, somebody else says something else, and the money comes out. The money comes in and out.
No.
and
But these are trades that are being made 10 minutes before Trump tweets something. Someone very close to Trump is making those trades.
I think it's possible that the ship's not as buttoned up as we wanted.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
They're
like
cutting
it's not like
it's not a good answer.
I doubt very much his
It's not
children
like
are
this.
doing
It's not
any
like
of
the
that.
It's
administration
got to be
doesn't leak
someone
like a
very
sieve.
close, though. It's got to be someone very close.
Moreover, they were all they all flex that they were up on the ODNI's phones all the time.
Yeah,
They knew
the
exactly.
CIA did just come out and say
if you
we're
watch
tracking
the way
Tulsi.
that you watch the way they've been seeding the narrative that Trump is going to get rid of Tulsi Gabbard for 4 months. This has been going on. Like they're bragging that they know exactly what's going on.
Well, think about
and this is where I'm down to like I don't know who to fucking trust anymore. Like I've never known who to trust, but like people that have been told to me I can trust them or I can trust it. I can't trust anybody. I'm like Gabbard has been the most confusing figure in the administration since the day of the Joe Kent resignation. I have not been able to get a read on anything. And when I'm that confused, that's the hallmark of an excellent,
she's
and I
been
mean
pretty
excellent
quiet.
intelligence.
She's been quiet.
Yeah, but the chatter around her has been crazy.
Well, let's assume that she's known about her husband's illness for a long time and has been staying quiet as a result.
Right.
maybe.
And only
then-
now
and then you-
But I
enacted to
actually
move.
viewed her. I actually have viewed her quietness as a positive, and that is to say, if she was doing her job, I don't want her at a podium spewing
Because
shit.
if we don't know, the
So,
enemy
so,
doesn't
so,
know.
so the fact that when she resigned, all of a sudden go, oh, that is a plot change right there to me.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about the husband. I
The
didn't know
last
about the
really
husband at all.
demonstrable thing she did was go as an observer to follow the FBI to the Fulton County election headquarters and observe the retrieval of the ballots from Georgia. That's the
To
last major thing that she really
oh,
grandstanded about.
Yeah, I
what
was going to say that's exactly
I was
right.
gonna
It
say
was a
what Dave
grandstand.
was
Yeah.
saying about somebody close to Trump, just as a they call it five. No, it's not 5D chess. It's devil's advocate. The CIA came out like 2 or 3 days ago and said they were tracking the keystrokes of Tulsi, who's
Yeah.
it's one thing if it's tracked by us. You're doing that to the ODNI. You could also argue then that they're probably doing it to the president.
No, but
So
no
it
doubt.
doesn't necessarily have to be somebody. I mean, I'm not saying it's not. It could very well be fucking Vance. I don't know.
But the trick is, unless there is a holdup on his tweets, which there could very well be, so they could track the keystrokes of Trump, knowing that 10 minutes later his tweet will be cleared for release.
Yeah, maybe.
So it could be something like that. I
Mhm.
agree, but it looks bad.
No, it looks horrible, and I think the
It
answer is
does.
probably
And the Melania coin looks bad. And so there's
no,
a
no. The
history.
answer is probably bad. Like
Jared Kushner sitting there with what's his face, Witkoff, talking about turning Gaza into a resort town. Looks
all
bad.
awful.
Right.
No,
So
I'm with you. He's a thrice millionaire. He's a thrice married billionaire that lives in a gold building, gold penthouse on top of a building and eats McDonald's on Air Force One. Like, I'm not at all opposed to saying like, yeah, he's probably a little bit of a sleaze
but
bag.
I've had no trouble with his idiosyncrasies. But if he's playing a very, very big geopolitical game, it would be time to stop the petty bullshit to me.
Well, JFK,
Again, but
JFK
again,
was
like
still
everything
sleeping
else.
around.
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes your flaws
And
go no matter.
where did JFK end up?
Yeah, I'm not listening. For the sake of me getting visited by the FBI again, historically JFK was killed, and that has nothing to do with Trump. But no, your things come out. Eisenhower had a mistress. So did FDR. It's while operating the war. He died in Warm Springs, Georgia with his whore. Like,
Right.
it's
That doesn't surprise me for any of them, right?
but what I'm saying
Sure.
is that World War II is arguably bigger than whatever Trump's doing, and their flaws still come out. Kennedy's,
And
fucking bimbos while there's nukes in Cuba. Like it's not these things
yeah,
don't go away.
and there's so many other things we haven't even touched on yet. But what Trump, the symbolism that came out of the King's visit and Trump's visit to China, and the things that were agreed to, and the things that Putin has said since then, I'm telling you guys, the realignment of the world has already been agreed to by the three most important players on the planet at this point: America, Russia, and China.
So what
And
happened in China that, besides the fact that he went, what came out of that? What was released besides some token deal, economic deal? What came out of that?
What was yeah, at this level, it's about the symbolism
Of him
It's like-
going?
of him, not just him going, but how that he was treated, where he and Xi met. Like
Wasn't he mistreated a little? Didn't he get greeted at the plane by someone below Xi? Or am I remembering
Did you
that
not?
wrong?
No. He was like they had Chinese dancers playing fucking YMCA, for Christ's sake. Like, are you kidding me? No. Like
I
the
don't
whole
get that.
thing.
I don't get that,
No,
just
dude.
for the record.
Dude, Trump was treated like absolute freaking
Okay,
royalty.
okay. So like the Saudis treated him. Okay.
Oh yeah. No, he was treated like complete and utter royalty.
Yeah.
And the other thing he did properly was he treated the king with the proper amount of respect, King of England, proper amount of respect, but at the same time
I don't think
zero
the King of England deserves
Showed
any
zero
respect for the
what?
record.
showed zero subservience to the king.
Yeah.
What I saw from Charles at Congress and at the dinner, the state dinner afterwards, was, to put it bluntly, more Breakfast Club than the Imperial March. More "Don't you forget about me" than than Darth Vader scene. Right? It wasn't the Imperials coming in and saying, "We are reinforcing our dominion over our former colonies." This was, "You guys are going away or going your own way, and don't forget about where you came from. That if you go listen to Charles's speech in Congress, you'll hear it. Go watch the bits and pieces of the state dinner. It was very important. And then Trump like puts the fucking Minutemen outside the White House. Like,
That's
are you
funny.
kidding? Like, that was the biggest goddamn. He had Marines dressed up as Minutemen with fucking muskets. Like,
And look what the
it
king
was-
came home to.
Yeah.
That was funny, by the way. The Minutemen with the muskets was really a nice touch. I got to
it was a
admit that.
beautiful touch. It was a. It
Yeah,
was.
I got to
It was.
admit that.
This is not there. What's said behind closed doors in the rooms with no phones and no anything, that's what's important. Trump got multiple hours with Xi, and under those circumstances, that doesn't happen for no reason. Okay. And then the level of histrionics that we're seeing from the amplitude of the histrionics from the intelligence services and the intelligence adjacent services. Like when he's out of the country, they fake a story about having raided Tulsi Gabbard's office. That was a
Right.
fake story. That was
Oh,
fake.
it was? Okay.
That was fake. And Ratcliffe
I
was
remember
in
seeing
Cuba.
it claimed to be fake, but I couldn't tell who was the
It was-
liar in that
It
story.
was a lie. It was a lie. Just like, and at the same time that was
In fact,
happening.
I think I tweeted, when did the CIA get to raid offices? It struck me as
Right. Yeah, no, I
preposterous.
saw that.
It
Watergate.
struck me as preposterous.
You're correct. And then Ratcliffe was in Cuba negotiating with the Cuban regime. And Marco Rubio put out, I don't know if you watched the thing that Marco Rubio put out the other day, it was a 5-minute statement to the Cuban people in Cuban dialectic Spanish, by the way. Very important. And you're like watching
Which
that,
is
you know,
why
like,
he
okay,
got appointed, I think.
bingo. But you got to ask yourself the question, why would they put that out? The Cuban people can't see that unless, of course, we have mechanisms by which to get that disseminated through Cuba.
And
Meaning
by the way, when
and then Trump
Ratcliffe,
says we have like 10,000, we have tens of thousands of people on the ground in Cuba. Like we're getting ready to take Cuba.
when Ratcliffe went to Cuba, he brought with him the head of the team that killed all the Cuban bodyguards for Maduro.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Yes, he
introduced
did.
him.
That
He
was
introduced
a
him to the
massive
Cuban
flex.
leadership and said,
Oh yeah, that was
"Here's
a
the guy who
massive
killed all
flex.
your
And
bodyguards
then,
over in
and then he was with that
Caracas."
chick from Japan, and he made a joke about Hiroshima.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And Takeshi, she's lovely. And
More than justice, I want humor. More than
Yeah.
anything else, I just
Yeah,
want,
it's
Well, that
I
was
just want it to be
funny.
funny.
When all is said and done, there's comedy.
But
yes,
we've been going
Something
for
that Stephen Colbert forgot.
yeah, fuck that
some.
guy. We've been going for 2.5 hours.
I think
I
it's
need to go get
Someone,
enough.
by the way, showed a picture of Colbert's. I think it was Robbie Starbuck showed a picture of Colbert's staff, which is humongous,
yes.
and said, "How can you have a staff this big and not come up with a single funny joke?"
Yeah, no, I saw that one. That was really good. That was
Right.
excellent. I think
Right.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Well, I'm still confused for the record.
Well, I think to
I-
go full circle, I think what we're seeing is a geopolitical FDA trial the way it's supposed to be. Long, slow, methodical, and conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody going to a barbecue this weekend?
No.
No, tomorrow I'm going to I have to work on Newsmax for the month, and then I want to try and clear my decks later in the week so I can go to the movies again and go see the new Star Wars movie.
Okay, I have a trivial question.
That's-
I have a
that's for me.
plot. I have a plot of land I was getting ready to sell. It's about an $85,000 building lot,
Mm.
and I got told by my realtor that because of and why she didn't know this until 2 days ago, I don't know, but because of some net zero policy, no one can hook up to natural gas on the
It's
lot.
Huckle's new natural gas
Right.
restrictions.
So besides I was dealing with my wife and my dog and all sorts of shit. So I said, I don't want to talk about this. I hung up. Why are you telling me this now? And then I realized you can heat a house with electric. What am I missing here?
Right.
Is that correct? I mean, electric's not
It's
not
very
a
expensive
disaster.
though compared to natural
Oh, is
gas.
it?
Yeah.
Is
It is.
Oh yeah.
Then the other thing is you can put a 1,000-gallon propane tank and
Mhm.
be a prepper
That's right.
and have a fantastic source of dependable energy. Is that correct? Am
Yeah.
I missing something?
My house runs on
Yeah.
propane.
Yeah, I have a 125-gallon tank for the RV. Yeah.
And how long would that last? How long?
We
Your
had it
refill?
125 gallons lasted us through the coldest winter up here on the mountain. About 60
Okay.
days, 60, 70 days.
Okay, so 1,000 gallon would make you basically
yeah.
a prepper of a higher order. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's not a disaster then. I'm
No.
kind of
Mm-mm.
I could this realtor's fucked so many things up.
Yeah, no.
She's
If
a
propane's
daughter of a
available,
friend.
if propane's available, yeah, no. Propane's like, 385
Why
a
wouldn't it
gallon.
be? Why wouldn't it be
Well,
available?
I don't know. Just like it should be available.
Suburban
Well,
propane, right?
Okay, suburban propane. Yeah, I use them down in Florida.
I use them up
Just,
here. It's
Okay,
really
just
only a
had that.
question of what's Hochul going to do next.
yeah.
I know that fucking twat.
Fucking
Holy
witch.
shit! Boy, do I hate her. Boy, do I hate her. I think it's also a permanent bitch face that bothers me.
Oh yeah, it's a horse bitch face.
Yeah, it's like,
Something.
yeah, her and Gretchen Whitmer, like,
I would have voted.
which one has the better collection of cat o' nine tails?
Oh, I hate Whitmer too. I hate Whitmer too.
Well,
The
we shouldn't be
politicians are
hating on
getting
too many people, I guess.
well, the politicians are getting pretty insufferable. I miss the days when guys went into with cigars in the smoky back rooms, not Tom, of course, but and made decisions.
Don't you miss
And
George Pataki?
I don't know if I miss Pataki. I miss Cuomo at some level.
That'll tell you how bad things are in New York.
Well, it is.
Fucking
It
Cuomo,
does.
yeah.
It does actually. I could have imagined what's his face? Not Mario, not Chris, the other one, Andrew Cuomo. I could have imagined Andrew Cuomo getting the Democratic nomination. I wouldn't have been appalled by it.
Right.
Yeah, if he hadn't fucked up.
Yeah.
He fucked up, but to me it was kind of a semi-excusable. In the world of fuck ups, there's worse ones than that one.
Well, at a very bad time, when the Me Too stuff was just, he couldn't overcome that for
Yeah, I
whatever
know. The
reasons.
Me Too shit is awful. By the
Anyway,
way,
I gotta go.
here's another one last observation.
Sure.
The kids on Cornell campus are thin. I'm not
Wegovy?
joking.
Yeah, you said that last time. Yeah.
They're eating healthy or something. There's something.
We're
Is it
returning
Wegovy?
no, we're returning to
No,
homeostasis.
no.
No, we're returning to homeostasis. Women are getting attractive again, and it's going back. Yeah.
They're not eating crap. They're not. There's a message in that. They're also, by the way, the younger generation apparently is going to religion, and being a non-religious person, you say, well, why do you care? Because I think it's a healthier direction than climate change and Me Too.
Well, and it's not unrelated to what you said about like solar. We're going back to just the eons old patterns, the things that worked.
That's
right now, we are in a weird deviation.
Ready?
So
Star Wars is making movies about fathers and sons again.
Good Lord.
Right.
That's why I'm hopeful.
So there is a sea change back to traditional values, I guess is a way of putting it.
Yeah, I think more aptly, it's what we've been through, be it the last year, past 20 years, is but an aberration from the norm.
I think the pendulum had swung way over to the left. Yes.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, we went to the farmers market in Troy, New York yesterday, and believe me, there's quite a residue of freaky deakiness.
A lot of colored hair, a lot of color.
Well, yeah, we went past one antique store that styled itself as a gay and trans antique store. We saw one guy walking down the street, a huge hulking guy with fake little cat ears on his head and pink hair and pink sneakers. We saw innumerable blue-haired nose ring freaks.
So it's a work in progress, is what
I
you're
was going to
saying.
say. So you were in Gainesville?
No. We were in Troy, New York, which is very
city
much
of madness, city of lights.
It's very much a kind of I don't know, counter youth stronghold.
What I'm looking forward to, what I'm noting or I'm hoping to note is up here in rural Tennessee when I go to Walmart or I go to any of the bigger stores. I'm looking around to seeing if the people there, this is a poor area of the state. Okay, so what I'm looking for is to see the improvement in them, because I can't tell you how many times I've gone in the last 6-7 months, and we've been up here on and off, and I'm like, I look at some of these people and I'm like, we have to save these people.
The stats
They're
are
so off.
bad. The
Yeah.
stats are very, very bad. The
And
Michigan consumer confidence just hit an all-time low.
mhm,
To
mhm.
end on an optimistic note, I will say I saw something I've never seen in my entire life. I got on the elevator yesterday and I went down one floor, and then a couple other people got on. A woman got on, and she was on the phone on speaker. And as soon as the door shut, she said, "I'm in an elevator full of people. I don't want to be that annoying person. I'll call you in a minute." And she hung up, and it got really quiet. And I just said, "I have so much respect for you."
I talk to people on elevators on purpose.
Oh, you sack of shit.
It's the equivalent of walking up next to a guy in a urinal and start talking.
Hey, you ever think about cannibalism? What if we were stuck in here? Yeah. All right, we're gonna wrap it with that. I have to go piss and get food and all that good stuff. So
By the way,
everybody,
this boomer made it without pissing.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Amazing.
I when I was off camera, I was over there.
so maybe all these
Peeing in the
meds
yard.
aren't bad. If I'm the young one and I'm pissing, you guys are all in
Well,
these horrible
I've
things.
said before, if you're drinking ginger ale and you're pissing into a cup, personal experience says don't mix up those two cups.
Oh, God,
Please don't.
you've done
Not a
this
good idea.
before.
Well, I got to
All right,
drink
you
a
guys have a
dragon
great
myself.
Memorial Day. It was good
God
to see
damn
you.
it, everybody
as
have a
always.
wonderful weekend. Take care.